Tanzim.Assalamu Alaykum Welcome back to another episode of Boys in the Cave. My name is Tanzim, your co-host for today, and I'm also joined by a special co-host. Many of you may know him in Sydney, Malik. He's the founder of Mizan Avenue in Sydney. MashaAllah, he's a lot of stories to share, so I'm really excited for this. And Alhamdulillah, he also does amazing works in the community, and I'll put the links to Mizan Avenue in our show notes, inshallah, so everyone around the world can, inshallah, check it out. And Alhamdulillah, we're joined by someone very special today. Our special guest, Isaaq Muhammad. He's a secondary school mathematics teacher by profession, student of knowledge, and has studied the science of the temperaments. Alongside his traditional studies, he has been teaching Arabic studies, theology, and is heavily involved in community projects such as the OpenCircle Youth Initiative and Ghazali Children's Project. So, Assalamu Alaykum, Isaaq and Malik, and welcome to Boys in the Cave.
Walaykum Assalam.
Walaykum Assalam. Rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah. I know you touched down not too long ago in Sydney, and you did a workshop actually with the 4 temperaments, and that was sold out, Malik?
Yeah, subhanAllah. Sold out. The first one sold out in less than 48 hours.
MashaAllah.
And then we opened up another session the following day, and that also sold out. It was an incredible workshop. But I'll let Muhammad talk about that.
Yeah, so how'd you find, how's the experience with that, just coming to Sydney and teaching the courses?
Yeah, it was nice. They actually asked me yesterday, how was this different to the other ones? And I think, I thought about it quite a bit, and I think I just felt like the crowd, the audience, the seekers, the students were ready. I felt like they were ready, and that 48 hours, the fact that the tickets were sold out in 48 hours for the first program, just shows and reflects the intentions of the people. Because when they saw that, it wasn't really based off of actually having studied the 4 temperaments or having sat in a class with me or something. But it was them reading the title, knowing yourself. And they had a plea when they signed up to Allah saying, I would like to know myself. And it's all in the intentions. It's always in the intentions. Like in anything, in any person, in anything, for anything to be of something, it's in the intentions. When the intentions are there, the act has a weight to it. But when the intentions aren't there, then you miss out on really taking anything from the act. MashaAllah.
And because you opened up the workshop on Saturday, I think you did a Sunday one because it got sold out. It seems like people around the world, because you've traveled around the world, gone to different cities, people are really yearning for this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And what's your experience been about that in particular at this point in time?
Well, you'd think that, after having taught the same class 20 times in over like 7 countries, that it would get boring or it would get repetitive, or in some way it would become a bit mundane, and that energy wouldn't be there. And he witnessed the 2 classes on the weekend, and he also witnessed how different both classes were. Because when it's knowing yourself, then it's your responses as someone who's in the class. It's your journey. The teacher's there is only there to facilitate, but it's your journey, and whatever and however you respond and whatever steps you take and how strong your steps are, how firm your steps are in your responses, in your engagement in the workshop. It's not a dars for 6 hours or 4 hours. I mean, people who study full time would have a difficult time to sit in one class for 6 hours straight. But when it's a workshop, there's far more engagement, and then that's why each of them have been very different. Every single not one session has been the same for me in all these different places, and that's why it's Alhamdulillah, like, the response of people is the success of it, and I always share it with people, like the raw responses, and it's amazing. It's a pleasure to just have like facilitated it by whatever degree, but it's them just getting closer to themselves, and there's so much in that.
And Malik, you were actually in the classes. How was your experience in general? And just for the audience, can you clarify what Isaaq Isaaq specializes in?
I'll get him to clarify that, but what I'll talk about is pretty
from
much
your experience,
from my experience. I think the program, and I was talking to Isaaq about this yesterday, that a lot of times when we do classes, a lot of the teachers are pretty much articulating what our tradition says, and sometimes it can get very theoretical. But what I found with this program was that it was very practical, and it forced people to really to think about their relationship with themselves first, and then their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in that, it was very confronting even for myself, and I've sat through this previously as well, and I've known Muhammad for quite some time, and he's explained the 4 temperaments and the science to me. But sitting through the program, it is quite confronting, and you're starting to pick up on things that you knew about yourself, but it was like you're doing like subconsciously. And then you're starting to realize, this is my temperaments, these are my weaknesses, and being really real with yourself, what your weaknesses are. And then starting to think about, how can I motivate those weaknesses? And how can I, just be real with myself? So I think for a lot of people it was confronting, but there was a lot of beauty in that, because it's now I have to be real with myself so I can get closer to my Lord. So I think that was incredible. But yeah, I think Muhammad, for those who don't know about the science of 4 temperaments, could you explain that?
Yeah. So the science itself is one that goes back around 2,500 years, all the way to the all the way to the Greeks actually. And it was originally looked at from a physician's perspective. How do we deal with the human being's condition physiologically? So there's illnesses that start to come about. There's illnesses, and how can we treat those illnesses? So its foundations were in traditional medicine, but as it continued, there was also other theories that were coming about, such as Plato in his Republic. He speaks about 4 chief virtues. So there were separate discoveries sort of taking place, and different theories and studies of the human being, of the human condition, and all these different, from these different perspectives. But as time went on, scientists of these sciences started to make connections, and especially when Ibn Sina came, and when the Muslims came across this science, because this science was in line with Tibb al-Nabawi. So this was Unani Tibb, the Greek medicine, but it was in line with prophetic medicine. But they also started to make these connections between these 4 temperaments, these 4 chief temperaments, and the behavior of a human being, and it was in line with what the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ was. So you had the contributions by someone like Ibn Sina, and then Imam al-Ghazali. If you look at in the Disciplining the Soul, he's actually referring to the 4 chief virtues and how they correlate to the human being, these 4 temperaments. So this science was vast, and then you had many other scholars, Imam Jalaluddin Suyuti, many scholars who wrote books on Tibb al-Nabawi, but also books in other sciences, such as in tafsir books. These 4 temperaments are actually referenced. And there was a student who actually came to me and he said, I'm so glad you're teaching this stuff. He said, because when I was studying tafsir, he said, I started looking at these terms, and it's Damawi and Balagami. And he said, I didn't have a clue what that means. He said, technically, when I read Damawi, the translation was like a bloody person. Dam, right? And Balagami was a phlegmy person. What does that mean? The phlegmy temperament. So if you and anyone who wrote a tafsir was a polymath, so they had studied these sciences. That's why they were referencing these sciences. And if you do study tafsir, you have to be qualified to have studied all these other sciences to truly understand what that mufassir is saying. But anyway, and so that's its role in our tradition, and it was continued all the way to when modern medicine came. It was sort of rejected only because certain things weren't seen by scientists who, it's empiricism. It's what can we see. And because they couldn't see certain of the 4 fluids, and they rejected it. However, in psychology, it's pretty much there. But the science itself, to put it simply, it's essentially saying that all human beings have these 4 fluids within them, and one of them is a dominant, one is a subdominant, and then the other 2 are there. So in each of us, we have this, and this combination results in who you are. This is your nature as opposed to your as opposed to your nurture. So your nurturing could be different, but your natures are the same. And if you work out your temperament, and we can work out, for example, if you 2 here had the same nature, though you would think you're also different via your nurturing, you would say, for example, tonight I want to go to the cinema, and he would say, I want to go to the theater. That's because of your nurturing. You're probably used to cinemas and he's used to the theater. But if we look at your nature might be sanguine, for example, that likes entertainment. And so we can find out that where you guys meet. And that's the beauty of this science. It's all about universals. It's not about the particulars that we experience as human beings. It's the universals. And once you get into the universals, and anyone who's experienced universals, it's one of the most powerful tools you can ever get. The Quran, Hadith, all universally speaking. Rumi's poetry, universal. Most poetry, this book, poetry, universals. That's why they appeal to different human beings of different backgrounds. right? Because it's speaking to me at a universal level. And that's what it gives you the tools. It gave me the tools. I never had any intention to actually put this workshop together originally. I just used this science when I studied it. And I wanted to just, I just used it upon myself for a number of years. Let's say about 3 years. I just used it on myself. And when I came back, one of my sisters, actually, she wasn't really convinced in the science because she wasn't settled. And she's a particular temperament. Now it makes sense to me why she wasn't convinced. And eventually, after looking at her through this lens, I realized she's a melancholic, so she needs a detailed explanation.
SubhanAllah.
So I put the detailed explanation together for her, and I invited other friends and family, and they all came and they loved it because everyone finds themselves. And when I showed Shaykh Hamza this, he goes, do you know why the Beatles were so successful? Because each of them were the 4 clear archetypes of the 4 temperaments.
SubhanAllah.
And so when people saw them, they saw a complete group, first and foremost, and secondly, everyone could appeal to them. And this isn't just exclusive to that. I mean, in the Catholic tradition, they were studying temperaments 6 months before people would get married, just so they can understand their nafs, their universal, the part of themselves that just doesn't really entirely change. And so it's crucial. This is the science, and many Shaykh Yahya was saying that it's extremely important for parents to know the temperaments of their children, so they can look after them properly.
SubhanAllah.
And if you have 2 different temperaments in the same household who have the same nurture, but they have 2 different experiences in the same household. Yeah, you ever come across that? Where two siblings in the same household, same nurturing, but 2 very different experiences. One of them says, they just didn't get me. They just don't get me. And the other one says,
Tanzim can relate, right?
And then the other one says, why are you weird for? Why don't you just accept things? Look, it's perfect. Mom and dad did they did a good job and it works, but it works for your temperament. It doesn't work for the other one's temperament.
Oh.
And we've spoken about the same temperaments on a macro level, on a geopolitical level. Looking at this, it's just the scope of it is so vast. You can look at understanding political positions via temperaments. You can look at people reacting to global or at least certain events within their communities, and their responses are actually temperament based. So on a macro level and on a micro level, within a household, how do people respond within the household, and then how do you respond with yourself? And that's what we do at the Knowing Yourself program, is to sit with yourself first and foremost. Mostly people do these personality, and I'm going on quite a bit, but people do these personality tests. People say to me, why don't you put a questionnaire in the workshop? I say, because mostly when people do questionnaires, they're just lying to themselves. It's just what they want. And I always say to people, when we ask those questions in the work, I ask these universal based questions after they've done a lot of reflecting. And I ask these questions and people write their answers down. And then I say, okay, now imagine if your sibling was next to you or your close friend was next to you, what would they say about your answers? And then you see people laughing because it's very different, because you're deluded. Unfortunately, we have some form of delusion with ourselves. And that's why there's such a dissonance in our communities, even with myself. And there's this dissonance that starts to happen. And unless we face that, and these uncomfortable emotions that we sit with, sit with it first and foremost. People don't sit. That's why they just mask it away and just run off to something else.
I got 2 points to bring up. One would be just because I do want to go deep into like the temperament itself, so people, whoever listening to this, can kind of get an idea of who they are as well. But just a critique of the 4 temperaments. Some people may say, "Oh, I'm saying this." I don't know if other people say this, but for example, because I come from a business economics background as well. So, for example, when they see certain situations occur in the world, they take a economic lens. So they're like, okay, I'm going to read this through economics and get an understanding of what's happening, so I can, predict what will happen in the future, this and that. Would you say that some people may say that you have the 4 human temperaments, but you're reading people, but you're reading through a lens of seeing it as the 4 human temperaments, but you can critique that lens altogether? Like, what would your response be to that?
Yeah, so there's always that case of maybe you're looking at it from this perspective, and if we were to take that perspective out of it, then we can still look at the human being via other lenses. The difference, and that's true, like, of course you can ignore the temperament and you can just look at things via a different lens. The difference there is that That's all particular based. So you studied a particular science, you will see the world based on your particulars. So if you study business, you will always see things via a business lens, naturally, or whatever else you're about in your life. The difference here is once you start to factor in the temperaments in your perspective, so even looking at it from a business perspective, what I'll say to you is the 4 temperaments. So even within your class, for example, in a business studies class, there's 4 different types of ways of looking at it from a business perspective. And these 4, this way of looking at it via these 4 are constants. So for example, when I was putting this project together, I thought this science was like a lost science, and advertising companies till today are using the same science to identify 4 different types of consumers. There's many different, there's the DISC analysis. I don't know if you've ever heard of the DISC analysis. It's based on the 4 temperaments. There's the behavioral theory via these colors, 4, based on these 4. Myers-Briggs, 16. Right? It's a combination of the 4 temperaments. So, if someone doesn't want to look at it via that lens, that's fine. You don't have to. But what I'll say to them is but give it a go. And it'll never be the same. I guarantee you.
Wow.
It'll never be the same, because you'll start to see an important part of the human being. We aren't just our particulars. In fact, there's other parts of ourselves we've not looked at. Normally, when I introduce the science, I sort of draw a square on the board, and I say, what shape is this? And people say it's a square. Then I just draw it from changing its perspective, and I draw the rest of basically it's a cube. And I say, just by changing it, we've realized it's a completely different shape to what we thought by changing our perspective. And this is the key. So that business person who says, oh, but I'm looking at it from this lens and you're looking at it from that lens. The difference between me and you is, as I'm saying, I'm looking at it from both. And if I know more, I look at it via other lenses. And that's the beauty of a liberated mind. It's able to consider all these different perspectives when dealing with a human being. That's called a holistic approach.
I've got a point to add in here, because I've said this in like every podcast. There's a book called something success to achieve success. I forgot the title of the book, but it gives it. You would have been familiar with this picture of this woman that's like a beautiful looking woman, and then there's another. But in the book, it says most people see it as a beautiful woman, but there's another perspective, and in the book it tells you don't flip to the next page until you see the other perspective. And I'm like, I can't see it in any other way. And then I think another page actually tells you it's like an old woman. So I'm like, what the hell? How's this gonna work? So I was looking at it for like 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, now I see it. Now I actually see, because the way the picture's made, it can be looked at both as a beautiful woman or a very old and depressing looking woman. Yeah. So I'm like, it's kind of linking what we're saying.
Isn't it interesting that once you spend those 20 minutes, but once you see her, you can never unsee it.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of training the mind. Once you see, you can never unsee it. And one of the reasons why this 4 temperament works, and people come in critical and skeptical, and I always say give it a chance, and I'm yet to see someone who by the end completely rejects it. The only reason why you accept it, and even myself, the first time I did it, I thought, I wasn't too sure about it. Still at the end of it, I said, I'm not sure. But the reason why it works is because you've already experienced the 4 temperaments. You experience them in nature, the 4 seasons. You experience them via the 4 elements. In fact, when I first used to do the workshop, I would describe the 4 temperaments to people themselves. So I would speak about the 4 temperaments. And it's, the strengths and weaknesses and so on. But more recently, I've changed the approach where I actually, I pose, there's an activity that we do where I ask everyone to describe one of the elements. So I say, describe fire as a person.
Like angry, aggressive.
Yeah. And people keep going, and it's amazing because keep going.
Really short-tempered, destructive, not beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm blanking. Sorry, I think it's a podcast. Maybe that's so.
Yeah. But just look at those 4 that you mentioned at the start, or the 5 or 6 that you mentioned. All of those can, and the more you do it, and the more you go through it, so it's not very transparent. It's straightforward. Very powerful, has a presence. These, eventually, as you start to look at this archetype of a personality, fits many people that we know.
Yeah, not gonna lie. Yeah. Your names jumped into my mind.
And isn't that amazing? You only did 6 of them. Imagine in a class where people, and we don't just stick with the one. I mean, I set up with the one answer that you gave, but he's been there. Whenever anyone says anything, I say, what do you mean? And then they describe it. So when someone says, oh, fire is harmful, for example, what do you mean? Oh, if I get too close to it, or even if I'm far away, I'm feeling it. There's people out there that when they come into the room, we just know of their presence, even if they're on the opposite side of the room, even if they're not in my conversation over here, but they're over there. Whereas there's the water type, right? And if I was to describe water, how would you describe water?
Calm, chilled, introverted, but a bit more intelligent in the sense that they can kind of transition into like conversations without creating too much of a fuss.
Do you see?
Sort of stuff.
Do you see? What do you think he's?
Yeah, what do you think?
You
I
can
am?
work out. You can work out what he is by the answers that he gave.
Oh, really?
How you saw fire was from the perspective of water. So for water, you spoke far more positively than you did for fire.
I think it's a sanguine,
maybe a flag, right? Yeah. And you spoke about speaking. You almost described himself.
Yeah.
And I've only just met you.
SubhanAllah.
And you could, I asked you that question, what you just said about water, the characteristics that you gave, not entirely. I'm not saying that we sum up you into these things that you mentioned, but this is describing another type of a person that we know. What's also interesting is the water person would look at fire as sometimes harmful, whereas if I asked the fiery people, they would say fire is useful.
It's true. Yeah, from the perspective of fire,
Now I've just given you like 1% of it.
Well,
imagine we sit and we discuss. Some people with listening thinking, oh, that's a bit too simple. Honestly, it is kind of simple. So we have this constant conversation. Are we all entirely unique? And is it case by case for human beings, or is it one size fits all? And what this science is providing us is it's not one size fits all, nor is it we're all entirely unique. We're somewhat predictable from some perspective.
MashaAllah. There's so many questions coming to my mind.
Yeah, that's what always happens.
I think what I'll ask is, I think we were talking about it during our car rides, and you were talking about just sitting with yourself. And I think that's something that this program forces you to do, just to sit with yourself and with your thoughts and pretty much your nurture and everything that you bring to the table. All right. I think one of the first experience of just sitting with myself properly, I think we were together in Turkey and with Sheikh Mukhtar, and we did this exercise of just muraqabah, which is to find stillness. And we just sat there for, how long would you say, about an hour roughly, and just doing istighfar and just sitting there with our thoughts. And it's also very confronting, right? But you said something incredible when you linked it with the hadith of Jibreel. I wanted you to explain that.
Yeah, so in Hadith Jibreel, we see that the first thing that happens in all of this hadith is this man enters. So you're familiar with Hadith Jibreel, yeah? As he enters, and the way he is, and that's Angel Jibreel, as we know, when he sits with the Prophet ﷺ. But if we look at the description of how he sat with the Prophet ﷺ, how was it? How was he described as sitting with the Prophet ﷺ?
Very close to him.
Yeah, the description was his knees, his hands were upon the other, it was knee to knee. So have you ever sat with a human being knee to knee?
No, that'd be a bit weird, I think.
Right.
Modern age.
Isn't that interesting? That in today's time, we don't do that.
Yeah.
Imagine if someone was that close. Let me see if I can move this a little bit closer to you right now. How did it feel the moment I just came a little bit closer? You actually just avoided eye contact for just a moment because you felt a little bit exposed.
Yeah.
That's what we're being taught, that in a classroom, that's your approach with a teacher. You have to be pretty much present, that close. And you don't have to physically be that close, but your attention, what you bring to that interaction is sitting with this presence. But my question is that if that's what we're told to have a real conversation, to have a real intimate conversation, and unfortunately in this modern world, intimacy is lost. That's why the definition of intimacy is a joke.
Yeah. To bounce off you, I know that because in nowadays, because I like reading about like Orientalism and stuff. So how the British came to India, they came as a white man with a suit and all that. So they came in and tried to implement the education system, right? And so their version of the education system, or how you have to be educated, is that have classrooms, have the teacher at the front of the board. And we've kind of adopted it in this day and age as well. But what they didn't realize is that you can actually gain experiential knowledge through, you know, Sufism was prevalent in India there with like many Sufi orders and stuff as well. But they were blind to see that, you know, they thought their way was the only way to gain, you know, knowledge is to, you know, one teach at the front of the board and you have the whole class. But what you've described is actually, you know, if you look at Islamic history, I think Abu Hanifa, they would have like a circle and people really close, all the students. That's how we learn.
Yeah,
like,
but isn't that interesting? That's how we're learning with other human beings. What about ourselves? Have we ever sat with ourselves in that manner? Have we ever been that close with ourselves? This is what Malik was getting at. That what you're forced to do in those moments of sitting with yourself is you're exposed to yourself. You know, if you just stay quiet for a moment and you just reflect, why is it people are so uneasy in those and they can't do it half the time? We do it at the start of the session. It's because all this stuff starts to come to surface and I don't want to deal with it. So I'd rather just talk about something else. Right? Yeah. But what you're supposed to do is sit with that for a while, start to compartmentalize it, and you can start to make sense of yourself. Even in that situation, it's interesting that you went to, and no doubt that was the case, what the British and the influence that happened during that period. But right here, right now, what can we do about it? Right? What we can do about it and what I can do about it. And this is all about empowering the self. This is why it's called knowing yourself and not knowing others. Because you can know others, you can observe them. But we want to try to observe ourselves for a while because the power, most of it lies within ourselves. In fact, this was called alchemy. Imam Ghazali called his book The Alchemy of Happiness, which is essentially, it's via yourself. You are the base metal. And how via your own process, by knowledge of yourself, you can transform yourself into gold. It's all within the self, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu alaykum anfusakum. Very, oh, you who believe, you know, I mean, to literally translate alaykum anfusakum, that, you know, yourself is upon you. And in a slightly looser translation is take care of yourselves. Another verse of the Quran, Allah says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Whenever we hear a verse of the Quran, there's two things to do, isn't it? Look out for the nouns and look out for the verbs. The nouns indicate to you, do you want to be a part of that group or not? So if you don't want to be a part of that group, then avoid their verbs. And if you want to be a part of that group, then follow their verbs. And also you can find if you're from them, because if you're doing that verb, then you know which group Allah's putting you in right now in that current state. So when you see أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ, so you hear, it's the fasiqs, right? The transgressors, the one who go above and beyond the boundaries. So what does he say? He says, and he's also warning you, saying, وَلَا تَكُونُوا, like, don't be كَالَّذِينَ, like those, نَسُوا اللَّهَ, who forgot Allah. And you know, it'd be interesting to ask people, what do you think would be the response, or what would Allah say about those who forget Allah? And you would think that in the modern understanding, it would probably be, you know, they would get punished, or they would do some sin, or something like that. What does Allah say? وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُم. You know, the response of forgetting Allah was, He made them forget themselves.
Subhanallah.
So those people that we know, we've met in our lives, who are busy and preoccupied with everyone else but themselves, are some of the most ugliest in character people to be around. And irritating and causing a discomfort. There's already a discomfort inside here. I know my own sins. Don't you add on to it. Like, you know, and I met this one student of knowledge once, and I was so happy to see how much he'd been studying. And I asked him, so what project are you working on? Because I like to see that the guys who've been studying to be a bit creative, and how can we take this to the next level, you know, what we've learned. And he said, I'm writing a refutation against, and it was a predominant scholar, like a really famous scholar. And I thought, what a waste. But like, do you not have your own sins to be writing a refutation to yourself? Like, are we that unaware of ourselves that in my day, with the sins that I have, that I'm going to spend this day talking about? When I do that workshop, I just get a free therapy session with myself, because I'm of one of the temperaments. And I'm constantly reminded of like where I'm going wrong, because I'm going wrong. We're all going wrong in things, but this is the it's very, very interesting. And then you link that with the other verse of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says, "Min husn al-Islam al-mar tarkuhu ma la ya'nihi." From the beauty of a person's Islam, which is also interesting. But listen to this: "Min husn al-Islam," and husn al-Islam, like, you know, you can just look at that statement, or that phrase, sorry. min husn al-Islam, from the beauty of a person's Islam, from a beautiful Islam. So the fact that he's saying beautiful Islam, is there another part to Islam? Could there be an ugly Islam? Or the ugliness of an Islam? He says, min husn al-Islam al-mar, of a person, tarkuhu, to leave, ma la ya'anihi, that which does not concern him, that which has no ma'na for him, no meaning for him. So you know all these people, when they're focused on, sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
When people are focused on others, right? What type of an Islam is that? But when you're focused on, see, from the beauty of a person is to leave that which doesn't concern you, what he or she is going through. It has no meaning for me. And that becomes a beautiful Islam now. And isn't it beautiful when we meet those people who are just, someone says, oh, did you hear what so-and-so did? What's that got to do with me? And you just find a peace. The moment someone says that, the unrest that was in your heart that caused you to speak, because that's how it works. Most people speak because of an unrest going on and then they speak. Khalil Gibran mentions that. It was very interesting to think about that. But when that happens and someone just diffuses it, it has no meaning.
I wanted to ask because even from my perspective, I feel that I might be wrong. Rasulullah Sallallahu may have had we follow the hadith, we do our best we can to emulate his character. But wouldn't that mean that he has one temperament, and then we all have to become one temperament eventually?
No. See, the point really isn't to become one temperament. The point is to balance ourselves, to be the appropriate, to display the appropriate temperament in whatever the situation requires me to be. Sometimes the situation requires me to be an energetic sanguine. Sometimes the situation requires me to be an intense melancholic. When it's time to study, there's no time to be a distracted sanguine.
Yeah,
it's a time for me to be a focused, serious, studying melancholic. When it's time for me to set up an organization or work with an organization, it's time for me to be choleric and to get up and go. Right? Or when an injustice is taking place, for me to speak about it, it's time for me to be choleric. But when there's a lot of noise taking place and everyone's getting their comments in, then it's time for me to be phlegmatic and just be a bit passive right now and be peaceful and avoid conflict. So what did the Prophet ﷺ display? He displayed perfectly he displayed the best response to any situation. That's what we need to work towards. And what you see in the four khulafa is you do see, it's very interesting. Yeah, honestly, it's
like the Beatles example you just gave. Yeah.
And you see that and then you see them by the end of their lives, and you see this growth which is quite difficult to understand sometimes, because the melancholic temperament, the intense, deep, sometimes almost timid, to be able to later on in his life to display such great courage, like Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu did. Not that I want to speak about the negatives of any of them, but like Umar radiallahu anhu at the start of it, he's clearly a choleric temperament, and you see how he was as a person, as a choleric. And how he, like in the Jahiliyyah times, how many Arabs actually carried out those Jahili principles? Do you think all of them did that?
No.
Only those fiery, choleric types took on those principles and did that. But when Islam came, look what he did with the principles of Islam.
SubhanAllah. It's like what you said about exercising the right temperament, the right time. I know like Umar radiallahu anhu, we know through the seerah, very, out there, at times portrayed as angry. He just wants to kill someone that did something wrong. But then when he becomes caliph, he'll be crying on the minbar.
Right. Look at that. Almost displaying the complete opposite of his temperament. You know why that was? Because they had the best self-development going on under the best mentor ever.
And even Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, people see him as soft, easily to push around. And I know that Ridda was, he became more fierce and stern, and had to deal with that situation as well. And even I know Umar radiallahu anhu, I think what people have said, I think even during the time of Rasulullah with his family, he said that if his daughters came up to him, he would just be giving them anything he wants, not exercising that character of aggressiveness what we seem to think he has in the public.
Right, because what happens when you give fire a system? If you leave fire without a system, it'll just burn the forest down. But if you give it a system, which is what they need, then you see that fire running steam engines or something, covering vast distances. And in fact, when you look at his expansion, the expansion under Umar was the greatest expansion of the four. So it's like controlling fire, and look what it's able to do. Control water, and look at the balance that the response that Hazrat Uthman had, radiallahu anhu. But again, sometimes people who don't have an understanding of the 4 temperaments properly will look at what we're saying right now and maybe misunderstand. And this is why I always say to people as we're doing the workshop, halfway through, and you kind of did this as well, and this is natural, I did this, is once we start looking at the 4 temperaments, we start looking at that person that we know. Then we start working at formulating our understandings or constructing our understandings of the 4 archetypes based on that person. And that's when you make a blunder. Don't do that. Don't say, so Omar is the choleric. No, just say, understand the choleric. Once you understand the choleric, once you understand the science, once you understand the principle, once you understand the archetype, then you'll make sense of everything else. But once you understand it properly, and that's why you have to study the science properly.
And I think what you were saying in terms of the 4 Khulafa Rashideen, the best schooling that they had was at Rasul Sallallahu, and kind of connecting to your point about, traditional settings. And I think if you look at any perfect traditional setting, which the Prophet Sallallahu set out for us, was that, he came in as a person who was not teaching us theology. He came as a person, this is what one of our teachers says, that he was experiencing God. Right. And so now, because we don't have the Prophet Sallallahu, we're trying to articulate that experience, right? And so, which is important, I think, what the Prophet ﷺ did, he gave the proper dosage to every single one of them. And their training ground was like second to none. And I think, which is why, when we're taught Aqidah, for example, you can go through the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? But what our teacher says is, does it really resonate with you? Are you able to sit down and think about Allah? And when you do that properly, right, you're sitting with yourself first, right, and you're reflecting on, the attributes of God and all the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the prophets, etc. Which is why I find, this is a natural step to really sit down with yourself and to know yourself and where you fit. And then everything else it's like that missing puzzle right now, subhanAllah.
We've had people who were like 50 odd, 60, 70. One lady, she was 70 in California. She said to me at the end of the workshop, she said, I wish I knew this when I was younger, when I was raising my children. She said, but, at least I can use that my grandchildren now. A 50-year-old man came and he was quite skeptical. I worked at his temperament throughout the workshop. He was quite skeptical. I could see from his reactions. And then he came up to me and he said to me, he goes, I'm a physicist. And we both started laughing. And then he just said, he goes, 50 years, and he goes, and I had questions I could never get the answers for, that I never found the answers for. And he said, now I found it. And that's not because this workshop is also amazing or anything like that. It's because the science is there. It's always been there. Human beings have always been using that science. 2,500 years. It's far more consistent than the other ones, right? Just think about it. All these theories out there, and you've got this theory that lasted 2,500 years. And it's still being developed. And so, and it's worked in so many different environments, so many different people have different backgrounds. And it's just been an honor and a pleasure, really, honestly. Like, people look at this and they say, it seems like it's a successful project. It's whatever Allah wants it to be. In terms of success, we don't measure success by how things manifest in this world.
Absolutely.
That's not how we measure success. We don't just measure success. You can't measure success of this podcast based on the hits. You measure the success, as the Rasul told us. How do we measure success? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. If you intended this podcast to change the life of 1 million people, then that's what you'll get, Yawm al-Qiyamah, if you sincerely believe that.
So, it's a good reminder for myself. Sometimes I get caught up with the stats and
Dude, we all do, man. We all do. And that's why we do that moment at the start where we ask ourselves, one of the activities we do at the start, maybe you can do this with yourself right now, and maybe anyone who's listening, even listening to this podcast, the question I'd ask you is to ask yourself, why are you here? Why did you set this up right now? Why are those who are listening? Answer that question in your mind.
Can I answer out loud?
You can answer it out loud. Okay. But the reason I would say is answer it in your mind is because it's far more raw in your mind. And it's far more real in your mind. Yeah. And then I ask people to write it down. But if you do want to share it, because you're a strong boy, yeah, so you can go for it.
One in him.
Yeah, go on. Go on, Tiger.
So why we started was
No.
Like just a reason.
No. I'm asking right now. Because when we talk about hal, what's your hal saying right now? Why are you here right now? I know why you did it then. I mean, I'm sure we can have that conversation. But that's about the podcast then.
Yeah, but
what about here and now? Why did you wake up and set this thing up? Why did you respond to Malik's text? Right? And pause there. And now ask yourself. It's very different almost. Right? But that's real talk. Welcome to being real. Right?
Yeah.
So now let's go with that. And why that? And why did you want that? Right? So even though we were listening,
right now,
right?
I'm like, who's the host, who's the guest?
Right? And you keep going. And we do this at the start. We just keep going. Why? And then there's a bunch of people who settle there and say, so as I'm doing, and there's others who are like you, like thinking, and you see the smile, coming about, and like, ooh, really, I didn't see that coming. And there's others out there who, right? Why am I here? Allah wa Rasulihi. Rida Allah wa Rasulihi. Allah, seeking Allah's pleasure and the pleasure of the Rasul. And I put it down and they sit there like this. And I say, and why that? Why are you seeking Allah? You ever thought about that? And then they go, oh, okay.
It's the natural answer.
Right? And it's the natural answer, and it's a good answer.
Yeah.
But keep going and really find out why you're here. Because for the first time in your life, you're probably going to hear the statement of your current state. And that's very interesting to hear that. Because it might not be nice. But if you can tune it, it becomes beautiful. It becomes incredibly beautiful. And that's why when the Rasul was sitting under the tree, resting, and that man came with the sword, and he said, "Oh Muhammad, who's going to save you from me?" What did the Rasul say? Just take that in for a moment, resting. You know what happens when we're resting for a moment and someone says something and we just respond with what our state is responding? And that's why in the morning what you think of gives you an indication as to where your state is for that day. If you run to your business, if you run to your phone, if you run to see the stats, and that's where you're at. That's where you're at, man.
Yeah,
that's where you're at. But what was the Rasul state the moment Allah? And one of the riwayahs say that when he said Allah, he said it again and again and again. Just imagine the Rasul sitting there. This guy's looking at it. He's like, Allah, Allah, Allah. Right? Yeah, you ever seen that?
Incredible.
And then what happened then? The metaphysical reality of the Rasul affected the physical reality, the physics of that man. What happened after that? He dropped the sword.
Amazing.
Right? And then the Rasul picked it up and then pointed out, so who's going to save you from me? What's your state saying?
What's interesting about that as well, going back to in'amal min niyat, right? So that person might have had the intention to kill the Prophet, right? But we only control their intention. Allah controls the outcome. So even though he had the intention to kill, Allah controlled the outcome. And that's with everything.
It's like really deep. It's like the immaterial affecting the physical.
Exactly.
Dude, like
philosophy
100%, right? 100%. And that's why, like, this is quite deep. Well, this is called human interaction. Welcome to the club, right? Unless we're used to these only. Because this is action, right? There's a button which is action buttons, right? Just respond. Buttons, this is actions. But human being is far more. And if I sat here just being this person I'm supposed to be in this podcast, then we'll just have the conversation up to that level. But if I start to be a bit more real as to why I'm really here, you don't think I wasn't answering when I asked the whys. Even I was answering those. And I love it because every time I do the workshop, I'm there writing my own intentions as well. Why am I here? And then you know what was amazing? One of the girls in the workshop yesterday, she said, Sunday, she said, and the students, she said, oh, it's just like the 5 whys at Toyota. I was like, what? She says, oh, in Toyota, they do this as well to really, for their personal development. I mean, they're doing this for cars. They're doing this for cars. The advertising company is using the 4 temperaments to make money off you, to make more money off you. At the very minimum, I say in the workshop, at the very minimum, use the temperaments to make money for yourself. And you know what? People did. I had people message me 2 weeks after saying, I just want to let you know I got a job from the temperaments, from the workshop.
Yes. Well,
it's where you take it. And if you want to get to God via it. If you want to come to know yourself, get to come to know yourself via it.
I wanted to ask you, just in terms, because we probably didn't break down the 4 temperaments specifically. Could you just give like a quick rundown so maybe someone can kind of identify who they are personally?
So really, the workshop itself is quite long, and one of the reasons is because if you get like a really shortened version, you probably won't believe it. I think anyway. I mean, that was the case with me. But just to for the sake of the podcast, I'd say there's these 4 types, which are, again, as I mentioned, everyone has a major and then a secondary. So you have a dominant temperament and a subdominant, and it's very interesting, the combination. So you have the sanguine is what we call the popular sanguine. They like spring. Wherever they go, there's joy, very optimistic, fun, energetic, loving, sincere, that type of a person. Then you have your phlegmatic person, which is your peaceful phlegmatic. Avoids confrontation, good listener, good emotional intelligence. Right, there's that type of a person. Then there's the melancholic, the deep, intense melancholic. Their type of a persona or their personality is more of a it's one of seriousness, grounded, realistic, and ideals based. And they're sometimes seen as being pessimistic or being negative, but they're not actually negative. They're just optimistic. They're just idealistic. So they have ideals. And because no one matches up to ideals, because ideals are close to perfection, right? And because people don't match up to perfection, what happens then is it comes across as if they're being negative because you're not good enough. And that's why they love their books, because in the books they find all the ideals. But in the real world, it's like you and you, right? And then you have your choleric, which is the powerful choleric, the fiery type. So you have the sanguine, which is the airy type, and we call those characters the airy fairy type. And the phlegmatic is the watery type, and the element for them is water. That was by Paracelsus in the 16th century, where he made these connections, but others made it as well. And then the melancholic is like earth, grounded and full of jewels. We just got to work to it. And that's why they're quite intense. And the phlegmatic and the melancholic are the introverts, and then the choleric and the sanguine are extroverted. And so your fire and your air are a lot more, they make the impact there and then in that moment. And the melancholic and the phleg are a bit more slower to react, because there's a lot more consideration taking place. And that's why they're introverted. And that's why their contribution manifests over a longer period of time. So that's, in a nutshell. So people would really, and again, I wouldn't say where would you put yourself, because you're going to put yourself where you want to put yourself. So I would say is that if all the people around you, if you were to find a consistency in what people were to say about you, what would they say about you? Would they put you as a fiery type? Would they put you as a airy type of person?
But because I know people say that, out there, people who have interacted with you, there'll be like 1,000 different perceptions of yourself.
Yeah,
people say that. So what's your?
Well, that's the other thing and that's why I would say don't ask just some random person that you know, or don't ask that person at your workplace, because you're going to be at your workplace or these places. You're going to be at these places according to that situation. What I would say is what are you like when you're with your friends, when you're in your element? And I mean friends like your homies, people who know you from back in the day, or your siblings. Because the siblings, the siblings are the ones you can't fake it. They'll just look at you and they'll be like, really?
You were sharing a story about that, about yourself, in terms of when you found out about your own temperament.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah, that was interesting. So, I was abroad and I was studying, and we were living in Jordan at that point. And I thought my temperament was a particular temperament, but that was because I was living a particular life that wasn't necessarily my comfort zone, especially when you leave your country and you start reading and whatever. But it was actually an evening where some of the students had come out, and it was all mostly Westerners, and we went out for one evening, and we were and it was a social, and that was the day where I wasn't, my jihad against my nafs and all the hard work I was trying to do and trying to be this person. That was a day off for me. It was just, I just need to chill right now, do what I do. And it was on that day I discovered that's my nerves, that's my temperament. And that's why this is useful, because that's the guy who will always be there. So even at your workplace, at your law firm, you're trying to be this fiery law person, whatever. But when you go home, sometimes that just takes a lot of stress out of you, because that's not who you are. And that one who you are, when you're in your element, when you're in your comfort zone, that's how you recognize your temperament. But again, some people come to the workshop and figure out the temperament. Not everyone does. at the very minimum, you know which one you're not. So, if you're that popular sanguine, then you'll know you are. And if you're not, you'll say, I don't know which one I am from the other three, but I'm not that person. Right? Process of learning via the opposites. This is a really extremely good tool to use, to be honest. But it's like that. And so I had an evening out with some of the friends, and I realized, oh my gosh, like I am clearly that temperament. But then there's also the books. And when we do the workshop, by the end, I just introduce the science, and then I recommend the books, and they're all in the notes, and I let people go and read about them. And then, and it was amazing. It was in California, and there was a 50-year-old man who came to the workshop, and his daughter sent me a picture of her dad, and he bought like all 5 books and like 3 others by the same authors, and he just was starting this journey of self-discovery.
MashaAllah.
And it's just...
I have like 2 questions to that. The first one comes to my head because it kind of hits me personally, right? So I have said this, I've touched on this story in the past in previous episode, but just in my personal story, I wasn't that much into them when I was in year 10, when I was in high school. And I know for a fact that year 7, I used to get a bit bullied and stuff. So I wasn't like myself, but then because of society, and then you see clubbing, drinking and stuff, you want to be more extrovert with just people around you. So I think I'd be like year 9, year 10, 11, I try to be that extroverted guy. I don't know what other people perceive of me, but I thought myself is just being out there, extroverted, fun, cool, make everyone laugh, that sort of guy. But then I remember distinctly, and this kind of coincided with going to the dean, but every time I'd go home, before I go to sleep, my house was so empty. Like I could feel like very distinct emptiness, and it was so distinct that this day, if I reflect on, I can still feel how I felt, right? But and then when I started like first year uni, Alhamdulillah, I got connected. I had like Muslim, like I was always connected with the deen, but wasn't like on in depth, right? And then first year uni, got connected with brothers, and Alhamdulillah, being part of the MSA, being part of the clique, my personality from external level just like flipped. Like it went from that out extroverted guy, this and that, to like more in my own area, like more, like back then I always wanted to be with people and hang out, but then now it was just like, I want to be by myself. I just want to be alone. And then like the fulfillment, like the iman, like that feeling in your heart when you, I guess, have that yaqeen, it's just like, subhanAllah, like I experienced that. But I feel like you can take like a temperament lens on my experience, because I thought it was more so the fact that I wasn't practicing, and then I became practicing. But
well, you see, and that's a question people always ask, that, how can I work out in my past which bit was my temperament, which was my nature, and which was my nurture?
Did I change, or did I?
Well, so according to the theory and the science, is that our primary never changes. And I got a feeling I kind of know which one you are. And normally I switch it off, but I knew you'd be asking part of this, because that's what happens. Because otherwise I'm just always seeing people via that lens, and I actually switch it off. And alhamdulillah, like I learned to switch it off, and it's wonderful, because I take people as they are rather than all these assumptions that I'm making. But even in this situation, people ask, oh, so which one's which? And honestly, to truly work out what was, what happened with your temperament, is for you to really, only the person who can tell is yourself. But you have to put the shift in. Like there's no quick answer to it. You can't just give a scenario. I can give a theory, and I'll share it with you, but what's more important is that, only you can really know which bit was your nature, which bit was your nurture, and so on. And what did you, it could be a deen related thing, it could be certain sins, because sins cause an agitation inside the heart, as we know. So it's not always something that's, you being out your comfort zone or out your temperament or out your element that causes an agitation. It could just be, sometimes it's a sin, or sometimes it's a person who's sinning and that's not sitting well with us. Not to say that, you were or something, but in terms of, sometimes when that happens, a person could be forced to live a choleric life. And one of my friends, actually, he sent me a recording recently back in California. He said, he goes, this world in today's time wants people to be more sanguine and choleric, because it's all moment based. It's all here and now. Very interesting, right?
I think even the marketing companies would want that.
100%.
Don't consider, just buy straight away.
And so, and also like actors and all these guys who are out there making the money. It's a very sanguine, choleric type of a way of being, and that's why people are working towards that. But if that's the phlegmatic person, which is what we spoke about at the start, the watery type, but you're forced to be fire, you're the one who's going to be feeling really out of place right now. That this is just too much for me. But the point of all of this is not to just find out which one you are and to stay there. That's not the point. I've not made this course, or I've not shared this course for people to just sit around and say, I'm the watery type, you're the fiery type. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. What's the point of that? I'm not interested in that. And and that happens. The point is how can I achieve what the fiery guys achieve, being water? And that's what module 3 and module 4 provide. How can I motivate myself from a watery perspective? For example, a fiery type. For the fiery type, you say to them, you give them the facts, they go off what they know. Malcolm X type. So do you want to make invest £100 in 3 weeks, you make £1,000. Simple. They know the facts, they know how long it takes, and has it been proven? Yes, it has. All right, I'm interested. Did you make the £1,000? Because that's the other question. Did you make it? If you made it, I'm interested. If you didn't make it, that's just another scheme. That's the choleric. That's how they see it. The phlegmatic person, the watery type, is very different. The choleric is a principle-based person. The phlegmatic, the watery type, is a people-based person, and they're more in touch with their feelings. So for them, you can't say to that quieter, relaxed person, possibly you, maybe you're probably a sanguine phleg or a phleg sanguine, especially with what you're doing right now as well. And it's interesting, it's not video-based, but you could have gone for video-based, but you didn't. That's just something to think about.
Yeah.
And again, you know the answers. But for that phlegmatic person who's based off feelings, for that, I love it. This is what I love about the workshop, because then you get people smiling.
The other reason, like, we don't have the money. But that was the reason I was thinking.
No, but this is also interesting, right? Because check this out. This scenario is to do with money. So check this out. So for the phleg to go out and to make that £1,000, you can't say to the phleg, give me 100 and I'll give you 1,000 in 3 weeks. Or you say to them, do you want to start a business? Do you want to make £1,000? They'll be like, oh, me make £1,000? Nah, I can't do that. The business guys, they do that. Maybe I'll speak to the business guy, but I can't do that. And the way you motivate them is you say to them, you really got to dig down to their feelings to get them to make that £1,000. You say, how does it feel not having £1,000? It doesn't really feel very good. How does it feel having a podcast, but then still having the funds for it? It doesn't really feel, and you start to get into that. And it's like, what if I told you about this scheme? How does that scheme sound to you? Right? Or the scheme sounds, and you've invested that time, and that's when the phleg starts to get interested. And it's crazy because that's how they work. And if if that's your background and it's business, that's why all the examples I give are very, based on these particular environments that we have where that happens to someone, and the phleg starts that conversation of potentially opening up a business now or investing that £100. Because of the fact that you've invested in them, so they need that, whereas a choleric doesn't need that. Don't ask me about my feelings. I'm not interested. Just give me the facts. It's very two different people, right? And that's the way you're motivating them. So that's the point of this: is how do we take this to motivation? And it's not just money. It's how do we get the person to pray? A sanguine is a social butterfly. A melancholic is no interest in the social needs or the needs or being in and around people. So when it comes to praying, for example, for a sanguine, they love jama'ah. They love doing things together. Can we do it together? Let's do it together.
SubhanAllah.
Right? A melancholic is different. They'll just because they're principle based. Sanguine is people based. So the sanguine is like, should we go together? Let's go together. And this works in the gym. I had a personal trainer who came and he goes, even for the sanguines in the gym, they need group classes. Group classes work, or going with a friend. A buddy system works, whereas a melancholic can just get on and train if you motivate them, give them the knowledge as to why they need to be training. So it's, and I'm giving just a taster of and I'm not a fan of giving tasters because there's all these questions that arise.
Things I've thinking about now is just essential. Also about,
you should share that story of your sister.
I'll get to that. But in terms of social media and how we can construct these temperaments or construct a fake version of ourselves, right? So I pretend to be this cool, popular sanguine when I'm not really. Because even with, for example, Insta stories, right? Anyone who's done an Insta story, how many takes have you done? Do you just put it straight away? Because you're subconsciously constructing a perfect image of yourself or what you want people to think about you. But it might be the fake one or it might be the genuine.
Are you speaking from experience?
I come from a marketing background, so I do these all the time. So,
yeah.
What would you say about that?
Yeah,
Because you mentioned,
100%.
subhanAllah, I think in the classroom, I don't want to take away too much from what you teach in the workshops, but I think it was incredible when you connected to one of Allah's attributes, al-haq.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Yeah. But even in social media, like you see, like a sanguine will then just do what everyone else is doing on there because that's popular and they love the pleasure or seeking the pleasure of the people. And sanguines are like that. They like to see what everyone enjoys and then they try to deliver that, which is not always healthy, because what if your crowd's an unhealthy crowd for you, but you're trying to please them? So you'll do silly stuff just to please them, and that's why they're sanguines, you know. And then the melancholic who jumps on it, who's ideal based, and then they jump onto social media and they find all these people with all the imperfections, and it just increases depression for them.
Well, this is so much to like take.
It's I mean, in that 4, 5, 6 hours.
Yeah.
Can you believe this? We did the session from 10 till. This is what I couldn't believe. We did the session from 10 till 5. 10 till 5. Okay, we had breaks in between and stuff. 10 till 5, and when it finished, people stayed behind still. Majority of the class was still there. I mean, when I say majority, I mean like maybe 1 person or 2 people left. That's it.
Yeah.
From a crowd of like 55 or people or something, 2 people just left. And everyone's still sitting there. And I actually said it 3 times. I said, you can leave. And people still didn't want to leave, because when it comes to the South, like, because we know how vast the South is. And in this moment of just sitting here, because I know because you just had that face this whole time and you've probably been checking stuff, but you've also just been a bit introspective. You can see when someone's kind of going inside because they get quiet. It's like, oh. And this dialogue's just taking place right inside. And that's what happens with people, and they just want more. You know. But the name of God, I mean, like, this is all requiring us to be authentic. Like, this doesn't work if you're being fake. If you're not being real and you're trying to be that person you're trying to be, then you're going to waste your time with the temperaments, because you're going to pretend that temperament works for you because you're trying to be that person, or you have some benefit in it, especially dunyawi, worldly benefit in it. But if you start to be real, and what's one of the names that's related to, what's one of God's names that relates to being real? Any idea?
Haq.
Al-Haq. Right? And we know that each of Allah's names, so when we start to be real, we manifest. God's name is manifesting, right? And each of Allah's names has 2 parts to it, or 2 dimensions, you could say. The Jalali dimension and the Jamali dimension, this beauty that appears in Al-Haq, and this majesty that appears in Al-Haq. So when a person starts to be real, it's very beautiful to see where someone's being real. Even if they say to you, sorry mate, I don't really like you. All of a sudden, you appreciate that though, because at least you're being real with me. Right? What if I didn't like you, but I pretended to like you? That's a very different experience. So when someone's being real, they show this Jamal. This Jamal starts to manifest in this person, and this Jalal. What does Jalal mean? Majesty. What does majesty mean? This thing that deserves or demands respect. So when a person starts to be real with themselves, you automatically deserve or demand respect. And when you see someone as being real, you just respect that. But when someone doesn't display al-haq, or displays the opposite of it, and being authentic, opposite of being authentic is being fake, we get the opposite of Jamal. What's the opposite of beauty?
Like ugliness.
Ugliness. And do you see that when people be fake? And it's just ugly to see. Or when they're unaware of themselves, there's an ugliness that starts to appear. And what's the opposite of majesty, or that which demands respect? That which rejects respect, that which is not worthy of respect. Another word for that is being pathetic. And there's a patheticness that starts to come about with people when they're being fake. There's an ugliness and a patheticness. If people who knew me were watching me right now, if I was saying anything different to what I normally say, there would be an ugliness and a patheticness.
It's unnatural.
But if I'm saying what I always say, which is true, they'll be watching this saying, oh, that's actually beautiful. That's good on him. Respect. Right? Some people say it's amazing. It's just, and it's real talk, man. It's not like there's no agendas out here. I'm not trying to be anyone. I'm not that I'm not. And you're not listening as trying to be someone that you're not. You're just sincerely listening. And when you get that, you get just this real talk, right? You get something that we all recognize as, you know what? Because look, what we just spoke about right now, if this was from a fake perspective, people would be lost right now with what we've been speaking about. Fire, air, and earth and water. It sounds like Avatar, right? That cartoon, the airbender. Yeah. And you know, someone actually came in, I was in Connecticut. She goes, one of the attendees, she said, when you were describing the personalities in the airbender, the Avatar, the comic and the cartoon, those 4 different types of people, the fire tribe and the air tribe, she said they're exactly their temperaments. It's the temperaments they've grouped into. And Shakespeare did this. Shakespeare knew the 4 temperaments, so he exaggerated the temperaments into these characters in his plays.
Oh.
So then people were seeing that, and it's like, oh yeah, that reflects reality. It's incredible. People did this, you know, like advertising companies especially did this. So when you get a sanguine type of a person who's popular and everyone is drawn to that. For example, if anyone remembers Saved by the Bell, there used to be that character Zach. Once you get that and you make him the face of your product, all of a sudden people are drawn to that product. So they're clever with this whole science. Yeah,
like speaking about like not like ugliness, it was funny because I was talking to my friend recently and I told him, because there's been like dialogues with like ex-Muslims and stuff like within the last year, so I just brought it up. I'm like, bro, like, did you, when I look at their faces, I see ugliness, I see like a darkness on their face. And then I asked him as well, like, do you see it or is it just me? And then he's like, yeah bro, it's like I see it, and it's like a crew as well, so you just all see it, you just see something darkness. So it kind of links with what you're saying, like speaking haqq and, you know, the ugliness that comes out if you don't anything opposite to the truth.
Everything manifests, man, you know, and that's why, like, you know, even with like, just gotta be real. Like, even when you, and you know, this whole process about being real, you know, if you start to develop that within yourself, then when you turn to God, you can be real with God. But if you're fake everywhere else, you're gonna be fake with God. And that's why people actually struggle with like du'as. People have asked me, they say, how do I be real with God?
Do you say be real with yourself? Is that the start?
I just say speak to God as if you were speaking to another, you know, just speak as you would normally speak. If you start saying, oh, you know, and it's fine, like we have those, because we have the du'as in the manner that they are, because that's appropriate for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the adab that we're supposed to have. But sometimes, if you just turn to Allah and just say, do you remember that the case of the man in the desert when he says, oh Allah, you are my, does he say, oh, you're my servant and I'm your slave or something? He says you're my servant and I'm your lord or something like that. Yeah, he gets it wrong. Yeah. But he got it wrong, and did he get held up to that? No. Did Allah hold him to that? No, because he was being real. Whatever he was trying to say, Allah heard what he was saying without him saying it. Right, so when people get caught up on the technicalities, you know, one of our teachers, Osama Khan, would always say, God's not going to catch you out on a technicality. So if you turn around and say, man, I'm struggling. Right? Man, did you say man? Right? There's people like they would say, astaghfirullah. Yeah, it's kufr. You call Allah man? There's people that are listening to this who probably would say man in a dua? What are you talking about? Yeah. It's when you're being real. And that's why you'd even say man to a woman when you're being real. I just don't get it, man. Yeah. Right? Because you're being real. It's true manifestation of, you know.
I think something that Sidi Michael Sugich was saying recently when he was here, you know, when we ask dua to Allah and we're asking for things, he goes, have you ever reached a moment where you just feel you're in conversation with Allah? Yeah. Because that moment is even greater than what you're asking for. Just that intimate conversation. Imam Ghazali calls it tadakkar. Just that moment of just like pure conversation that, you know, just you're just you and Allah. Nobody else matters. It's just you and him. And so it reminds me of also like a lot of the stuff that you're doing with knowing yourself also connects with one of our tradition of tazkiyat an-nafs, or the purification of the heart. Right. Which when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that nobody will enter paradise until they have a sound heart. Right. And so all this work is to find that peace and that soundness within yourself. So when you were talking about al-haqq, and when we create these fake version of ourselves, our hearts are not at rest. Yeah, there's this agitation and this unrest. But when you're real with yourself, that's when you're really like you let go, I'm at peace right now. Like, take away all those fake followers, take away all the masks that I'm, putting on to create this version of myself. But when you're real with yourself, that's when your heart is really, really sound. And you can get to that point of,
and this
intimate conversation.
My own personal kind of experience was like, even on Instagram, I had like not okay-ish kind of followers, like 2,000, 3,000 at one point, like a few years ago.
You're flexing
now. But I was pretty proud of myself. Like, yeah, I got there, alhamdulillah. But what happened was like, you just had to keep up to date with people liking others, and they'll like your posts. I'm like, I can't stand it. So I just unfollowed everyone, and I lost like so many followers. And now I'm at peace. Like, I think I'm on 700-800, but I know it's like good quality like followers, people that actually look at my stuff. So it's kind of reflective on what you're saying, just like that, getting that fake stuff out, because I felt like I was being not myself, and it just wasn't feeling good. Like, it was screwing with me mentally, physically, spiritually, even.
We've all been there, bro.
Fake.
We're all there. Sometimes you go through that in a day. I mean, we're told that the believer goes through 70 states in a day. So, even what and that's one of the temperaments actually speaks about. We kind of go through the 4 temperaments even in a day, even throughout the year, even in a month, the 4 quarters of the moon, the 4 stages that impact people differently. If you know, you know. And there's also an impact of it in our lives. There's different parts of, so that the different stages that I was speaking about, the airy type, the sanguine. The sanguine stage is actually a youth stage where we're all just carefree and having fun, young children, just having a good time. And everyone's drawn to children because of the happy-go nature that they have. And then the choleric age, the fiery age, is the teenage years. So everyone has experience of what it means to be a fiery teenager. Even that chilled out kid becomes a fiery version of himself.
Yeah.
You were speaking about that about yourself.
Yeah.
And then you have the melancholic age, which is when we're adults, when we have to be more responsible. All right, that's that melancholic age. So we all experience a form of responsibility and having to structure our lives. And then there's the phlegmatic stage, which is old age. And so we're now we've seen the world, we're a lot more relaxed, we don't respond like we used to, right? So we're experiencing these different stages in life.
Is it corresponding with like the nafs? Like, I know, like, in terms of if you're younger, if you're more youthful, you get attracted to girls more easily, this and that. But then when you grow up, the nafs kind of reside on that level. And then I know, like, it's a big sin, especially for older people, if they do zina, for example, because of the nafs. Like, your nafs shouldn't be inclining to do that. So is that interconnected as well with temperament as well?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure about sins though, but what Imam Ghazali does speak about is the nafs al-lawama and the nafs al-ammara bisu, which is the lowest level, which is the nafs that commands to evil. And then there's the nafs al-lawama, which is the one that's the soul that's working on itself. It's working sort of against itself and with itself and it's wrestling with itself. And then you have the nafs al-mutma'inna, which is the nafs that's at peace, and that links to the 4 temperaments as to how each of them is manifesting via them, and what role for each of the temperaments has in regards to taming the self. But he speaks about it. I mean, we're speaking at it just from the 4 temperaments perspective, but he speaks about, because you mentioned spiritual cultivation and things like that. Like, we don't really go into this workshop, but we start that. We give guidance. The 4 temperaments it's like, using knowledge and with something that you already know, and it just gives you another tool in going at it. So there's certain diseases of the heart that each of the 4 temperaments are more prone to. Now that's going to be far more helpful. So when you read a book on like purification of the heart, for example, by Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, which is a brilliant book, you'll see that certain diseases of the heart that you're more susceptible to. And what I'll do is rather than you going through it and trying to figure it out, I'll just give you a list of them, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, yeah, clearly those are the ones I struggle with. And there's ones that, I struggle with, and others struggle with. And it just helps you in that whole process. So it's like, and that's why when we say, Allah manfa'ana bima 'allamtana, right? Benefit me by what you've already taught me. So let me use what I know before. وَعَلِّمْنَا مَا يَنْفَعُنَا, and then teach me that which will benefit me. So what we're saying is, let me combine what I have rather than just learn this thing and now I'm learning fiqh. Like, once
connects with the whole holistic approach.
It's the whole holistic approach. Yeah. We were studying fiqh, and one of our teachers, Habib Umar, was saying that he goes, and when you study in fiqh of purification and of water, it's one of the first chapters is water, looking at how water could be of 3 types: that which purifies, that which is pure itself and it can purify, that which is pure itself but it can't purify, and that which is impure and it can't purify either. And he said these are like human beings. like company that you have that's pure itself and it can help you out. Then there's those which are pure themselves, but they can't really help you out in purifying you. And then there's straight up the impure ones, and they're going to make you impure. So when you start to develop an existence like that, then as a student of any subject, you can take the knowledge far, far wider, and the use of it just becomes something else. And we've seen that with good teachers that we've ever had. And that's why I remember when Shaykh Hamza said, if you ever sit in a class of poetry, with a true teacher of poetry, it will be one of the most profound classes you've ever had. Because what they do when you read that sentence, it's like, one day someone will come by. Well, okay, what does that mean? But the poet, the teacher of poetry will say, one day someone will come by, and then they'll say three more lines, and you'll be like, oh my God, that's me right now in my life. One day someone came by. It's because I
think in terms of just the the tools as well. Like when we were studying Aqidah with Ustad Umair, first time I ever heard, in order to kind of unlock Aqidah, that you need to learn the tools to unlock those, to unlock Aqidah. And it's like, what is the tool for that? And then he's like, mantiq. Right. And so we studied
the logic, logic for the people.
Yeah. So we studied logic before we even got into Aqidah.
Yeah, that's good.
And it opened the understanding a lot more. So it's just very similar.
Yeah, it's all the liberal arts, right? They call the liberal arts because they liberate the mind. You study grammar, you study logic, you study rhetoric. Look what logic just gave you. But let's just take grammar for a moment. What does grammar teach you? What does syntax teach you? One of the earliest things that we were forced to do when we studied Arabic was that you understood that a word has a meaning based on syntax. As where is it in the sentence?
The order.
As it has indicators, right? The i'rab, like how you indicate where its placement is. And what's that got to do with anything? Well, you start to understand that anything happens in your life, it has a context. You see somebody doing something, you put their action in the context of that sentence. Right? So you're not quick to judge, you're zooming out. When you study grammar, you're taught to zoom out. Where does this word fit in the sentence? And where does this sentence fit in the paragraph? And where does that paragraph fit in the chapter? And where does that chapter fit in the book? It's this constant making, looking at things holistically. And if you were to translate looking at things holistically, you could almost translate it as making things one, which is, in Arabic, we call it, the verb is wahada, and the noun is tawheed. So a human being is incredible. It's already there.
Yeah.
So, this ability to do tawheed. If you have the ability to do tawheed, you can see the one. But the Western philosophy is the complete opposite. They're interested in making things one. So what's the opposite of making one? Making many. Deconstructing. So if you know your philosophy now, and deconstructing, Cartesian dualism is break everything apart.
David Hume,
right? All of it,
analysts,
right? What is the apple? Oh, it's not a red apple. There's an apple dimension to it, and then there's redness to it. And even the redness, they'll say, oh, it's not red. It's light hitting that surface at a particular degree, and that's manifesting, and then I'm processing. What are you talking about? They're just different ways of saying the house. Somebody had one way of saying it, the other person had another way of saying it. But all of these don't change the fact that it exists, that there's a red apple in front of us, and I would like to eat it. And that's what we did yesterday at the Temperaments, because it's something that someone's mentioned, and I said, you can try to say, oh, but how does that work? And I'm not really interested in how that works. What I'm saying is this is, and you can't deny that it is. So let's make do with what is. And then the how, it's being a maths teacher, and I like precision, coming from a scientific background and a mathematical background. So I like precision. That's why I love logic, because it was straight. It's one answer. And what you find in the science in particular, it has a completeness to it. And then the pilot, right, yesterday on Sunday, he said at the end, first I was thinking, where is all of this stuff? How does it make sense? Being a pilot, he has to be melancholic, right? It has to make sense. Right? And he'll let you know it has to make sense. And he said, but at the end, the first two modules, I was thinking, like, yes, but it sounded all airy-fairy. He said, but the second two modules, it all made sense. Yeah. It all made sense. It all put it together. That's what he said, right? Yeah. And That's what we're after, man.
And even like you can work out people's temperaments and work out what job and what they'd be suited at.
Yeah.
And even like you mentioned, because I come from also like a salesy sort of background. Like I did sales like 4 or 5 years ago, and even how you interact with people, if you can work out the temperament, then you can kind of sucker them to but get the product.
Yeah,
So
it's true. Yeah.
it's like unlocking not just like yourself, but you just understanding of the world. Because I guess end of the day, people operate by their intentions, and you can kind of get where they're coming from in terms of personality. You've kind of unlocked a dimension of the universe, if that makes sense, in a sense, because everything around in the world, like I remember I was having this thought, I was driving down, I'm like, we're looking at like a capitalist system in the sense that you have like, I don't know, Hungry Jacks, you have like roads, but it's only external because it's what we wanted. Like whatever we wanted, our desires, our nafs, is just manifesting in the external. That's literally what I'm seeing around me, you know what I mean? And then it's like, what it actually boils down to is that you have to kind of get at the intention. What do people really have a grasp of their nafs or the desires? Can they really control it? Because whatever they're thinking or doing, I'm hungry, I'm just gonna eat. That's it. Like it's just like come and go.
Yeah.
It's kind of manifesting.
We all fall into the trap.
Yeah.
Right. But you're right, man.
I think one of the things that you said, and question to you, you said the word sucker, right? So I'm thinking about like what are the negative usages of the temperaments, and how can someone be, use it for their own advance? Yeah.
Well, people do, and people did this. I mean, people use ilm al-firasa. This was part of ilm al-firasa. It was this whole science of working at these subtleties. So, there's famous life coaches out there who are able to work out the personalities of people just by the way their shoulders are. Some people have shoulders like this. Some people have really relaxed shoulders. Some people's the choleric has the chest out generally. The phlegmatic sort of tucks it in a little bit. And you can use this for your own personal gain. But that's why I say very clearly, every workshop I've done this, I've always said, if you use the temperaments, and you ever say a statement like to defend yourself as an excuse, if you use the temperaments as an excuse, I'm not interested. I also make mention many times that this isn't about knowing others. If you're using the temperaments to work out others, then that's not the purpose. We can do that in a part 2 or a part 3, but right now it's important to work out yourself. But as for like, you can't control that. If someone takes it, and naturally you do. I mean, you had an instance yesterday, and you just hope, inshallah, like people have good intentions in it. But like any science, it could be taken in a bad way and use it. But you used it with your sister. Listen to this. You told me this yesterday.
So just right after the class, I got home after a long day, and little kids, younger kids playing with their phones, and my mum's trying to take the phone off my younger sister. So, and then my mum was like screaming, "Hey, give me the phone! You're talking to your friends all night. Go to sleep or go study." So I saw one type of approach, and I know my sister, she's more of a sanguine phlegmatic, right? So I went in and like just sat with her, and I was like, Mum is shouting, what do you call it? How long have you been studying? How many hours did you study today? If you stay up all night tonight, how would you feel? How would you feel tomorrow morning? You won't have the energy to do the work and all this, like just a softer approach, right? And she just gave me the phone like that. And my mom, who was screaming with her, was like, she couldn't get it. Like if
you do some sihr or
she did everything, she couldn't get it off her. And I just like, sometimes they need that soft words. If you go choleric on them, they just get agitated. And
it won't work.
As a sanguine, it'll be like,
even like family dynamics. People like the dad, from like a Bengali household, sometimes want to be like overpowering, or maybe soft as well. Some of them, but let's just say
the Bengalis generally are a bit more softer though.
They're a bit more softer. But
you basically see a Punjabi dad or something. There's a lot more, in your face,
like in your face, and they have that approach with the kids, and because the kids don't like that approach, they never actually open up to the dad. It kind of destroys families. It's a bit scary if you think about it. And it's like a disconnect from the self, because we don't understand the self and people's natures, where we just it's like what right at the beginning of this episode, you're telling me what do you think of fire and water, and I was saying, I was picturing someone, but it's like their perception. You know what I mean? So if you're looking from the perspective of fire, you think like everyone's just gonna vibe with you. You get across your point, and they'll reciprocate. But it's not the case.
It's not.
I think next question to that will be, how does it work with relationships?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wanted to add on to what you just said. Like, that's not a one-off. Like, I've had people actually message me that. The one lady, she shared a whole thing on her Instagram as a post, and she said, I saw my son is a choleric. And she said, I looked at him and I was like, I knew he was choleric. And I tried out what this guy taught us at this workshop. He just simplified the relationships via this framework. She said, I tried it out. She said, so with a choleric, what we say, so with a phleg, you need to have that conversation, and they feel you've given them time and they feel like, oh my gosh, you've understood me for a while. That means more to them. For the choleric, they're not interested in that. One of the ways to motivate a choleric, and if you're a choleric yourself, is challenge yourself. So those fiery people, when you challenge them, right, you can't pray 5 times a day. What you mean I can't pray? You can't pray? It's okay, you can't pray. You know what, try 3. You're in like that lower level, like that's cool. That's it. No, I can pray 5. You can't pray 5 times a day, and it's okay. They will transcend, because this is the beauty of the choleric. It really is. They can transcend their own environment just for gain of something. And if you give them the right gains, then they'll go and do that. And so she said to her son, she said, you haven't done your homework, have you? And he said no. She said, yeah, I knew you couldn't do it. It's all right, you can't do it anyway. Just don't worry about it. And she's like, what are you talking about? I can do it. And she wrote the dialogue. It's hilarious. And then I should read it out. But then in the end, she just, no, you can't do it. It's okay. And he said, no, mom, I can do it. And she said, no, it's fine. And then she just left. And I always say, then leave him. And she said, he did it. And she said, I'm sitting there thinking, no drama. This is what she said. No drama, no swearing, no tears, no crying. She just got on. She said, I can't believe how simple it was. And it's worked for my own relationships. That's one of the reasons why think about it. If you come to your siblings and say, and you come with these tablets saying, I've received these tablets from the mountain, from the heavens, and this is going to change our lives. How many of them are going to believe you? They only believe you because they've actually seen a difference in you. So a lot of my siblings were interested because they'd seen a difference.
Subhanallah.
Right? Yeah. So then they came so they just said, I want to listen to it. And they listened to it. And because my problems with people who I know also, not to say that we never have arguments, but they do decrease. I guarantee you they'll decrease. Like his decreased in one day. One less stress. Because you understand, most people are not reacting to you based off you. That's just the way they are.
Like even
so when, when your dad or whatever responds the way he does, that's just the way he is. And if you try to like tranquilize that incorrectly, you'll mess it up.
Yeah, if you like try to overpower, like, no, dad.
Because you said exactly. If you just say
you're wrecked.
If your dad says, go get a job, son, and you're like, all right, dad. The next day he says to you, did you get a job, son? You say, I sent my CV off today to 3 places. That's all he wants. My brother came to me once and he said, like, how do you improve relationship? I said, because they only want a few things off you. The cleric just wants to see you doing something. So just do something.
Even if it's not like you didn't do anything, just say like.
No, I mean, don't lie, please. It's just like, I sent the CV off and you didn't send anything off. Because then they'll be really angry when you find out you've been lying.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why ethics have to be there. And everything catches up, man. Everything catches up. And you got to be honest with yourself. Like, that's why I'm saying, like, if you can be, that's why the whole thing is if you can be honest with yourself and you accept you're a phlegmatic, a part of you is you're going to get lazy. You then have a target for yourself, which is I need to send CVs. And then automatically it works out because you sent a CV for yourself. And so when it asks you, you're like, yeah, actually, I did send it. My dad's a choleric melancholy. We had an interesting discussion just before I came. So one of my friends was running late. It's interesting if they're listening. One of my friends was running late, and my dad was saying, text your friend. Is he coming? Text your friend. You'll miss your flight. He said it like 6 times. And every time I sent the text the first time. The second 3 times he said it, I said, oh, Dad, I just sent him a message. That's it. Now, don't get me wrong. It was quite frustrating, like, because it's the 6th time you're saying, like, it's not going to speed up. Right, but I didn't say it straight away because he needs to say it 6 times. So once he said it 6 times, then the 6th or 7th time he had said it now, and I clearly sent the text whilst he was there. I sent two texts in that time. And then I said to my dad, it's not going to speed him up. So we've sent 2 texts. We'll just wait now. And I never see my dad I swear, honest to God, he just goes, yeah, true. And I just sat back and he stayed quiet the whole time. Till when my friend came. Because a part of it was I let him be. You would be happier. Everyone will be happier in your relationship because even when someone's telling you the right thing, what you're frustrated is they didn't let you just be for a moment. And we just want to be. And that's why our household can become a toxic environment for us when they don't let us be. That's why we go and run to our rooms, because in our rooms we can be. Right? Right? Amazing. So we go to our rooms because that's the place to be. One of the reasons why we don't go to the mosque is why? Because they don't let us be. So we run to the third spaces because in the third space they let us
be.
And we still listen to what needs to be said, but they accept us. So remember that man, the young boy who came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, Ya Rasulullah, give me permission to fornicate. You do that. Yeah, it happened. Did you know that? Yeah. He goes, give me permission to fornicate. I know the Prophet, and some of the Sahaba did this. You know what the Prophet ﷺ did? Put his arm around him. Sit down. He let him be. He validated him, man.
SubhanAllah.
He let him, it was okay to ask that question because it's real talk. And that guy was real as well, wasn't he? He just said, it's getting tough right now. His struggle's real.
Rasulullah,
and like, I'm sure there must be a way out of it or something. Like, give me, you're the Rasul. I'm sure you can change something. Right? And then the Prophet had a dialogue with him, but not straight away. And even the way the conversation was, it was so like, would you like that for your mom? Would you like that for your auntie? Would you like that for your sister? Hey, but the first bit's key, man. The first bit's everything in relationships. Wallah, like, you know what I was saying? When you start to be uncomfortable with yourself, and that's what, check this out, Malik. This is gold now, right? When you start sitting with yourself and all the discomfort comes and all your nonsense starts to surface, but you sit with it, you don't run away from it, and you start to compartmentalize it. For the first time now, you have sat in discomfort. So the next time when someone comes to you with discomfort, you have the ability to sit with it. But most people can't sit with somebody else's discomfort because they can't sit with their own discomfort. So they're quick to react. And it's only because you can't sit with yourself. If you sat with yourself, you'd realize that technique doesn't work on me. Right? But it's not my place to school you on that. Because what can I do? I was in San Francisco and I was staring at the bridge and it was beautiful. And my friend was next to me and I said, what a beautiful view. But check that out over there. And he said, oh, I can't see. And you know why he couldn't see? Because there was a lamppost in front of him. All right. So the view was what he was seeing was something, there was an obstacle in the place, in his way, in his vision. And I said, it's just there. And he said, no, I can't see. And I said, dude, just move. Change your perception. And the only way you can change it, people out there are literally waiting for lampposts to move. That lamppost ain't going nowhere. Your dad is not going to change the way he is. He did that for 50 years. He's going to continue. And not just your dad, but all of our dads. Well, I know people, I know one guy who said to me, I'm waiting for my parents to apologize. And I looked at it like, you're just waiting for it. That's waiting for a lamppost that will never move. The only thing you can do, chap, is just move, so man. Just move for your own sake.
So many thoughts, boom.
Right? And you know what? And it was choleric, innit? And cholerics go off what they know. So you know what I said to him? A flag would be different. I would say, how does it feel being in the same place for the last 10 years? That's what would work for a flag. And he'd be sitting there thinking, you know what? It doesn't really feel good. What do you think you can do about it? Oh, maybe I can change perception, like you said. All right, good. And then they'll move. A choleric you can't do that with the choleric. What you say to the choleric is because they go off what they know. So I said to him, I was like, all right, just out of curiosity, where have you seen that happen? Have you ever seen that happen in real life? Like, where have you seen that? Do you know a friend of yours whose parents apologized? And he said, he goes, yeah, of course. I saw it in a movie. And I just said, I did the old Kermit the Frog, in my cup of tea. I just said, saw it in a movie. Cool, bro. I left. Because I don't usually sit there with the choleric and say, how stupid is that?
Yeah.
Because don't do that with the choleric. Because you know what they'll do? They'll defend their silly plan.
Yeah.
And try to do all that they can to prove their crappy theory that is absolute nonsense. So you just give them that, because it's fire. You don't mess around with fire. You don't poke fire. You're silly. You're silly if you poke fire. With fiery people, you just need to put the right thing in there. Sorry, I moved back tonight. You put the right thing, the right element in it, and the fire starts to change color. You just need the right element, which is their knowledge. And that's why with Malcolm X, when you changed the knowledge he had, you had different results. Right? But when it's amazing, isn't it? So. And that's why when he lived the life he did, it was when his teacher said, like, oh, you become a lawyer. Right? Remember that? He So
yeah.
Right? Yeah. And he said, and you see his response to that. He transcended his social.
Even Michael Jordan, I think, same situation.
Yeah. I think then how do you take this knowledge? And you said there's a difference between what's your nature and what's your nurture. How do you start to develop and to nurture? What's the next step from this?
Well, I mean, first is that, like the biggest thing that you're going to receive from all of this is just the ability to, and the importance of reflection. And like, I'm not speaking from a perspective of having mastered life, and I certainly don't. I just say, like, this is a science and it's a brilliant science, and just take it. That's all I'm sharing. And there's more information to share. So as an educator, I'm just teaching essentially. But in terms of where do people go with this, it's the more you reflect, the more you learn, like, I know more of the temperaments because I reflected more on it.
Yeah.
Like, what did we do at the beach yesterday?
Then we did some dhikr.
No, before the dhikr, what did we do? Remember when you said to me,
lowering your gaze?
Between lowering our gaze and the dhikr, subhanAllah, we sound like angels. We went to the beach, we lowered our gaze and the dhikr, subhanAllah. CD.
No, we found a private spot, so.
There's no gaze. But look, what
reflecting on the water.
We looked at water,
and the clouds.
We looked at the clouds, we looked at earth that was around us. And we started speaking about the temperaments via it. We spoke about how when the water comes, it's so gentle, like the phlegmatics. But when you go deep inside those quiet people, it's very deep. And there's a point where you go past and the tide takes you in. So those quiet people, they're very gentle first. But if you take your time to sit with them, all of a sudden you find out, whoa.
Yeah.
Well, that was going on. And they take you into their tide, right? We also said, look at the clouds. And the clouds were beautiful at that point. So we said, that's like a sanguine. There's always something going on with them. It's a spectacle to watch.
Look at me.
Right? And it's like you look at me. Then there's Earth just sitting there playing its role. That's what they like. The melancholics they just crack on with what they need to do. Not the most exciting thing to see. But so my point is so where do you take this? The more you reflect, what does Allah say? Sanurihim ayatina fil afaqi wa fi anfusihim. We'll show them our signs on the horizon and in and of themselves, hatta yatabayyana lahum annahu al-haq, until it is made clear to them that it is the truth. That's why Allah's put us on this planet. You just better your relationships, keep learning, keep experiencing, and then there's so many more. There's a book by Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, a 9th century cognitive behavioral therapy by a 9th century Muslim scholar, and he speaks about 4 chief mental illnesses. And I'm telling you, it's linked entirely to the temperament. And I've tested this on people. I've said, that's the biggest thing that's been your problem in your life. And they're like, oh my gosh. And then I've given them advice of how to tranquilize it. Simply by what he says. This whole thing, I don't have like the answers myself, or they're not my answers. They're the answers by the teachers that are already there in our rich tradition. We just need to connect people in the right manner, in the right form, with the right package. And part 2, part 3, there will be, I've already set up a website where the course will be online, available for people as well. Obviously, it's better to do it in like live because it's an experience really. It's really interactive, but I also want to offer it online because there's been a lot of people from Europe and all over the world really who've been interested. There'll also be this other thing, inshallah. There'll be a lot of stuff, and then eventually there'll be mentoring as well that I want to give people, because there's a lot of people that are asking a lot of questions, and like even my Instagram, there's so many messages coming through and I just can't respond to people. There's people who've messages have been there for like a week now, and but I can't. So I want to just put a process, and that's what we're taught, right? Just have a process in place, and hopefully but yeah, it's really where you take it and how much you take it. But I always say to everyone at the end of the workshop, buy at least one of those books, start reading it, and improve your relationships. I just want people just to better their own the relationship with themselves. I just get that, and I'm on that journey. Everything that I'm saying is not that and therefore I'm this yogi who's mastered himself and I'm gonna shave my head off, just shave my hair and just wear no, it's I'm just like you on the journey, and you can see this right now. Like, I'm not anything special. I just came across this science. Take it and let's all just heal the world. Make it a better place.
More that I've like realized, looking into Islam, there's so much depth to it, subhanAllah, and we've sort of, I don't know, like catered for the modern world where we've just kind of shoved in this one little package and given it to people.
Yeah, 100%, man. People, how many guys go to the mosque and say, I want to, I want to get closer to God. And then someone says, start this Arabic course. or start the fiqh class. It's like, when someone says, I want to get close to God, you're supposed to say, tell me more. What do you mean? Then you'll know if he actually needs a fiqh class, or you might need a Aqidah classes.
Yeah.
He might need just wants to do a dhikr on the weekend. He might want to study Arabic. He might want to read the Shama'il. He might want to do something. There's so much to do, right? But just hear people out, man. We don't hear people out, man, because we know better.
And it's like you have to always be that perspective of being trying to work things out. Don't try to assume that you know everything already. But that sort of limits your idea of gaining knowledge, I guess. If you just think you already know everything, you're not going to really and truly learn.
What's the dua that we read at all the workshops? La ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. That's what the angels responded. That's how we should respond, especially in a class. La ilma lana. There's no knowledge by ourselves. Illa ma 'allamtana, except by what you've taught us. Innaka antal. This idea of, God's names. When you say God's name, you put yourself in your place. When you say Antal Alim, you're the all-knowing. You're just affirming that I ain't got a clue. Innaka Antal Alimul Hakim, and you're the all-wise. And I just mess up. That's the reality.
Yeah.
Even knowing the 4 temperaments, I still mess up. Everyone messes up. And I go on about the 4 temperaments like it's a game changer, but I still fail. But that's the nature of this is the balance that the human being gets put into. I was just sharing with a friend, and I just said that, people see like this is people say like, oh, good on ya, stay winning, stuff like that. And I said, it's a day for you and a day against you. Ali said, there's days for you, a days against you. And the response was, brilliant response. It was, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was along the lines of, and like stay centered in any of the days. When the day's for you, stay centered. Alhamdulillah. When the day's against you, astaghfirullah maybe. Or even then, alhamdulillah, it could be worse. Point being is you stay at the center. I don't know if you're familiar with the Wheel of Fortune. You're familiar with the Wheel of Fortune?
The TV show.
No, this is.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the TV show.
No. Yeah. No, this is this theory, and one of our teachers speaks about, Shaykh Hamza Yusuf speaks about it. He taught us the Rihla in 2014. But he just mentioned that, wherever, everyone essentially is on this wheel. Things are going good, things are going bad. Things are on the up, things are on the way down. In any case, you're always expected to have the appropriate response. So, that's the human being being centered, man.
It's being centered is really funny because I was really thinking about this like last night about Islam taking the middle path with everything. Yeah. So, for example, we obviously care about the afterlife, but we've also got to engage with the dunya. So you take the middle path. You do what you need to do in the dunya, and then you also worry about the akhirah. Yeah. You take that middle path, even with things like not oversleeping and not too much, too little sleep. It's about taking that
everything's
middle path.
balanced, man.
Islam just comes into the picture. It's like you don't say there's multiple gods, but you don't say there's no God. You take the middle path. It's like even
good on
like with
very
everything
good,
I started realizing even subhanAllah, like even with the idea of how there are materialist scientists, they're like all we see is the world. It's like Islam is like we know there's a dimension, we take that middle path. You engage, Allah, there's an unseen, and then there's like a seen world. You take that middle path. You know what I mean? So subhanAllah,
it's true, man.
The perfect balance.
Yeah, it's about getting that perfect balance.
And in life we're trying to navigate between that because we're always by our nature going to extremes. By our nature we're going to extremes, and we're like on a seesaw. We're just trying to balance it constantly. The secret, the real secret, which is not such a secret.
Tell me, Sensei.
Is just follow the Sunnah. It's entirely balanced, man.
SubhanAllah.
That's the beauty of the deen. And when you get more knowledge, and like whatever knowledge you get, you realize, oh my gosh, the balance is there. Yeah. Like the process of even with diet, like just have the cucumber, right, which is cold and moist, right, phlegmatic, right, and have a date which is hot and dry, which is your caloric, and eat that, and it'll balance you out. The Sunnah is complete balance.
And what I find as well, which is incredible, is with the Sunnah and with the Quran, it's pretty much getting you to do two things. There's like things which are action based, that you should be doing these things, and there are things that are just like shifting mindsets, right? like what you were saying about Imam Ali's quote, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it, like, remember me in your good days and I'll remember you in your bad days. Right? And what you were saying in the workshop as well, like, when we're in a tribulation or in a difficulty, or even sometimes when we're not in a difficulty, right? Just the stress of it does more damage than the actual tribulation. Right? Even, when we were going through Talbis al-Iblis with Muhammad, one of the tricks of the shaitan is to make you fear poverty. You're not even in poverty. All right. You're just fearing it.
Even the idea that, like begging is haram. Allah, you have to show hope in Allah. So it's like for you to actually have hope in Allah to achieve what you need to achieve.
So it's all about essentially the mindset and shifting the mindset and getting that perfect balance. So when you are in a difficult situation, you have the appropriate response. Right? Even when we're studying Al-Munfarija, like the entire poem was about trials and tribulations by Ibn Nahu. And the entire book in the beginning, it asks us for an increase of the difficulty. Right? The initial reaction is like, ask for an increase in the difficulty? Like, what kind of...
Yeah, remember I asked this question.
Yeah.
I'm like,
why? You were there. But you're not asking Allah to increase the difficulty. You're speaking directly to the difficulty that you're facing. So now you have this relationship with the difficulty, right? So there's a complete mindset. Usually when you're in a like in a trial, you just go passive. You just wait for it to leave, right? But then he goes through the entire thing and shifting, looking at the benefits of the tribulation, what Sheikh Hamza said about difficulty itself, that it's the package that the gift comes in, right? So once you open the tribulation, right, you unwrap it, like the gift is there, right?
That's
so once
amazing.
again, shifting the perception. And then subhanAllah, like you get to the end of Al-Munfarija, all it tells you, it gets to the dua. So the entire thing is shifting perceptions, and then it gets to the dua. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Like make abundant salawat. Right.
SubhanAllah.
And that's what ties into your point. Just follow the Quran and the Sunnah.
But to have that hudur, like to be present, and like where are you in it? Like where are you?
What you were saying, فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ?
Yeah, subhanAllah. Just it's all like being present. Like, and what's striking with certain people we experience or we meet is how present they are. Presence is the foundations for dealing with the situation. If you ain't present, you're not dealing with anything. So how many people that speak to us and they're dealing about something else which is not the situation? What did Muhammad Taha say yesterday about being a Jummah khutbah was taking place or something? And he said that whilst the khutbah was taking place, the guy who was speaking and he was speaking so passionately, but it wasn't. But everyone was switched off because he wasn't present. He was elsewhere. Wow. So we get present first. Find out what's going on, whether it's with yourself, whether it's with the Sunnah, whether it's whatever. Just be present. And one of the ways you can be present is just breathe properly.
It's funny because even people that may not be Muslim and they're living the corporate life and they're just like going back and forth, it's like they've lost themselves, It's all empty, subhanAllah. And I guess I can't explain. I feel you could say there's the system in place that keeps them going like a cog in a wheel sort of thing, or they themselves haven't really dealt with what's in front of them and really being in the moment. Because I know people like that say, I just did this degree, now I'm doing this job, I actually don't know what I'm doing in my life. And it's relatable to everything, I guess, like to everyone.
I think just in touching on what Muhammad Taha was saying about the Jummah, I think the opposite of that as well is how often you go to a dars or a class and you walk in and you're like, that teacher just expressed exactly what I was feeling all week. He spoke true to what I was experiencing. Because that person is a person of presence. Right. And sometimes we believe, divine inspiration that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts those words and sort of Bani words. And the articulation of that is a different dimension to it. Right. And so we go in and we're like, that is exactly what I needed to hear today. How? you know, and you do that over, like even when you open some of the traditional books, the hikams of Ibn Ata'illah, like every single hikam, like for me when I read it, when I read the hikams, it's like the proper placement of words that hits the core a lot of the times, and just once again shifts your perception and your perspective. I remember I was in Hajj, and the year before that I was in Umrah with Sheikh Hamza, and that Umrah was an incredible experience. And then I came back the next year to do Hajj, and I was trying to replicate that exact same experience, right? And I just wasn't feeling, you know, my presence wasn't there in front of the Kaaba, and I was, you know, blaming my heart, you know, you got a dead heart, etc. So I go home and I open up Sidi Michael Sugish's book, and one of the hikams is like, we don't do this for feelings. We do this because Allah told us to do it. Right. So once again, like the proper placement of things, exactly what you need to hear, because there's these experiences that he's talking about. We all go through them. All right.
But it's that presence that you know, it kind of goes back to that presence that you bring. You know, it's like, what are you bringing to the situation? You know, are you bringing yourself to the situation? Because then you're going to get something. But if you're looking for something else or other than yourself, and that's why one of our teachers, he's one of my teachers who gave me a great understanding of how this particular science fits in traditional medicine. He's a great Hakim Salim Khan. And he you know, one of the things he was speaking about emotional states, he said most people's emotional state is a result of their emotional diet.
What do you mean by
most people's emotional state? So whatever your emotional state is, your state right now, positive thinking, negative thinking, whatever, you have high self-esteem, low self-esteem, your emotional state is a product of your emotional diet. So if you have people telling you you're good enough, then you think you're good enough. If you have people thinking you're not good enough, you're not good enough. You'll be thinking that. So it's incredible. Like, you know, just the same way physically, whatever my physical diet is what my physical makeup is right now. If I've been eating good, I'll be feeling good. If I'm eating junk, I'll be ill. The same thing spiritually, right? If I feed myself correctly, then I feel spiritually strong. If I starve myself of spiritual sustenance, then I'll be spiritually unwell.
And whatever you eat, you take on the characteristics.
You take the characteristics,
even like if you eat meat, that's why you should restrict meat.
And we all know that meat one, but what about what we take in terms of knowledge? What was the spiritual state of the person who said that? What they said to you? You ever considered that? In the things that we read, there's a spiritual state of the person who said that. Right? So if you're reading good stuff, great. If you're just watching some random crap on YouTube, right? Or if you're watching some random nonsense anywhere, or if you're actually listening to sick stuff, you're going to take the agitation of that soul on into your soul, and you're going to be left with an agitation.
Even so with like I know with art, like Islamic calligraphy, for example, the people who like, there was this discussion where you can just get like a 3D printer, for example, or whatever, to make those artworks that are like Islamic artworks, right? But if you actually compare it with a 3D printer with someone who actually did it with passion and love for Allah, you see that manifest compared to even the 3D printer, even though it replicated the same thing. But you see two different things, even though it's the same thing. So like, it comes down to the vessel, the person who actually, you know, did it. And it's kind of relating back to what you said about the person who's actually conveying knowledge to you and what state they were in.
I'll give you another example. Imam Shafi'i, even when he was learning a subject for some people as dry as fiqh or usul al-fiqh, right? He chose his teachers based on their love for the Prophet
SubhanAllah.
Right. So that was the measure.
SubhanAllah. That's amazing.
Right.
Amazing.
In terms of, I just had a random thought. I remember, I think it was in the Ihya. I think actually I can't remember. But anyways, I think it was Imam Malik. He was teaching a class, and he was asking students like, "What's your perspective? This and that." And there was like a random, not homeless, I think more of a nomadic person that kind of walked by, and Imam Malik asked him like, I think his name was Ray Shayban or something, and it's like, what do you think? And then the students like, why'd you ask him? And then he said, because he's been through things that you guys haven't. So it's all about, not necessarily in terms of knowledge, but it's about perspectives as well.
Experience,
And that's what contributes to the state, right? And that's why we can sit in people's state and we feel peace without them even speaking. Because the spiritual dimension is a real dimension. It's more real than the physical dimension. Because even in a physical dimension, people can speak and you can ignore what they said. But in a spiritual world, and but being in tune with the spiritual senses, you can sit with people and you just don't like the vibe, man.
Yeah.
Because the spiritual senses have their own ears. And if that's alien to anyone, spiritual dimension has spiritual ears, your soul has spiritual ears and spiritual, like how can it speak without a mouth? Say something in your head. Right now, just say a sentence in your head. Say someone's name. Right, you said that without a mouth.
Yeah.
This is epistemology, man, because it's like then when people question like, how can God speak without a mouth? Or what's his mouth like? Well, you accept the fact that you can speak to yourself without speaking. When it comes to God, we'll have a whole debate on, but does he have a mouth? What an agitated soul.
I've got
and that's why the healing for most of those guys isn't the discussion. It's just get it off your chest, man. What made you angry? What's made you just so bitter? To get that bitter out. Part of the healing process is just let it go. Start crying. That's why I just give him a cup of tea, man.
Even like just to take a real life example, I know salespeople, for example, they make their salaries and they have to make, 2-3 sales a day to kind of get by, right? But you'll see good salespeople from bad salespeople because they have the thought, the optimism in their mind, that perspective that they are going to get that 2-3 sales and actually manifest, compared to someone who is negative, even though might be saying the same things as the other guy, but he's not doing well. It's not necessarily because, he doesn't have the ability, but it's just, I guess, something that in a spiritual dimension it kind of manifests, like the optimism that he has in the heart. Like he's going to do this. Like I remember, I was reading Miracles of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I think it was Ibn Ishaq. I can't remember. Anyways, so a famous scholar wrote it, and the miracle that Rasulullah did was a lot of times was, there's a little bit of food and everyone like 40-50 people were able to eat it. I remember I was reading it. I read it like the same story 3-4 times, but in different situations. I'm like, is this like a different narration of a hadith or something like that? But it's Rasulullah did that same miracle a lot of times, right? And the one time it was the Sahaba that kind of came into the house of Rasulullah, and I think Rasulullah asked Aisha, like, do we have enough food? It's like, no, we only got like a pot full. Only like 1 or 2 people, and he's like, okay, let them feed them. I think it was like 20-30 Sahaba, right? But the thing is, subhanAllah, the fact that Rasulullah told Aisha, like, scoop from the pot as if the pot's full. So scoop from the bottom and give it to them, but don't look at the pot. So scoop as if you think it's just, it's full. Yeah. So she kept doing that to, 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, etc., etc. 20 people, right? And then they left. And then it's like, how did this happen? SubhanAllah, right? Aisha who said that. And Aisha goes and looks in the pot. And the Rasulullah Aisha, what did you do? That pot would have fed people to the day of judgment. It's the fact that she, it's like obviously Allah, miracles and stuff. But it's because she was told, she was commanded, like, scoop as if the pot's full. So this kind of manifested in a physical form as well.
I think you were mentioning something similar. And we do this with our old art.
Right, the spiritual state affect the physical.
Yeah. Even I think even Einstein had this theory of like the thoughts affecting the physical. But from a scientist perspective, even like I think quantum physics can kind of tap into that.
Yeah, possibly.
SubhanAllah. So it's crazy philosophy and
no, it's true. And that's why we were polymaths. We were traditionally. We knew all the subjects. That's why we could really, like, whatever we said, we could qualify it. From any aspect and any question that comes from any. But Malik, you had something to say?
No, I was saying in the workshop, you said something similar with the old odds that we do in the morning, right? It does shift your mindset.
Oh, yeah.
Like, right, it's a proper alignment for your day. All the du'as that you read throughout the day, right? So if you've got pretty much a training or, a system that every morning after Fajr, I'm going to read these old odds, and these are odds that have been so perfectly placed by Imam Nawawi, Imam al-Haddad, etc. Wulad al-Latif, the word of Imam Nawawi. It's just incredible when you read them. There's this sense of power that you get, and protection, and just like
alignment mentally. For example, people thinking about anxiety over a particular thing that they might, so most anxiety and fear comes from either it either comes in regards to, it's like, so fear relates to losing something. All right, so losing can be in two ways. This is from Abu Zayd al-Balkhi's book. He says, you're either thinking about what you lost yesterday, or what you could lose tomorrow. All right, so that's where like most of anxiety comes from. That either you're sad over what came yesterday, or what you lost yesterday, or you're going to be scared over what you might lose. So you might lose out on something. He says that's where all of it lies, and he says, and all of that is not being present. First of all, you're not in today. You're worrying about yesterday and tomorrow. But he also, but if you look at like the word, for example, when we say ma shaa Allahu kan wa ma lam yasha lam yakun. So he says, look, ma shaa Allah, what Allah willed, ma shaa Allah can was, wa ma lam yasha lam yakun, and what He did not will did not happen.
SubhanAllah.
There goes all of it. So me thinking about losing out on that particular job that I worked so hard to get, or maybe might hit home for a lot more people, is if I think about Julie, who I didn't get married to, right? Or why didn't it happen, or whatever. MashaAllah kan wa ma lam yasha lam yakun. Then it's all gone.
I've got this personal story because it relates to a lot of what you said, right?
Yeah.
I
talk to us, brother. Talk to us. What's the name, brother?
I'll just add with the word as well. In terms of when you go further down, Allahumma inni as'aluka khayr hadha al-yawm.
Yeah.
Like for me, when I read that, it's like, it's the start of a new day. What has happened has happened. So I'm asking you, Allah, for
today, I'm asking you good for today. So fathahu wa nasrahu wa nuruhu wa barakatuhu dah. It's just perfect alignment. Yeah. But you got to be aware of what you're saying. For many people, they'll be like, wait, translate it. What does it mean?
Yeah. So it takes away.
And I always say, when I was younger, what I used to do? So I used to always have a problem of like a lot of the stuff in the mosque wasn't in English, and it just was like I was frustrated because all these guys were buzzing over something that I was missing. They were like, subhanAllah. I'm like, someone tell me what's going on. And what I started doing was I started just reading du'as in English. Because first of all, I was having trouble memorizing half of them because my memorization was crap, and I hardly ever memorized after times tables. That's it. And maybe just whatever. But just do it in English. Say it in English if that's what it means. Like if it's gonna have that effect, just do it in English. That's more important right now. MashaAllah. Even that one, MashaAllah, wa ma lam yasha lam yakun. So what happened was, what Allah willed happened. What He did not will did not happen. What's the next part? Wala hawla wala quwwata illa billah. Like to actually, like I keep saying, people say, du'as don't work because you don't know what you're saying.
And even
this
just to finish off that point as well. Allahumma inni as'aluka khayra hadha al-yawm. So when you're focusing on the now, you're removing away the regret of yesterday. And the anxiety of tomorrow, and you're focused on the now. And as a Muslim, we're told to be ibn al-waqt, to be a person of the time.
To be in the moment,
to be in the moment,
present,
and be present.
But again, like people will listen to this and say, oh, it works for you, don't work for me. And honestly, I'd say, how much have you tried, man?
Yeah, exactly.
Like really, a lot of people, like, you haven't did you try? And I don't mean to, I just think that energy was used because people do try, but I mean, energy was used where it wasn't supposed to. People work so hard in certain parts of the deen that, so someone wants to get to Allah and then he spends 2 years memorizing verb tables in Arabic. I put the shift in to get close to God. Why am I not there? Why? Because someone, you just memorized verb tables, which is brilliant. If you want to, they come back and help you out one day. They do. Everything has its place. Right? But
I remember like Mazel, I don't mind saying it openly, but like a while back, like I was interested in someone like a sister, right? But what happened was that what happened now is like she's married, right? Alhamdulillah.
Wow.
In the moment,
wow.
Right?
Okay. No, but all right. No, sorry, I got to just take this in, man. Wow.
Some
so
relationship counseling, bro.
Oh, here we go, brother.
In the moment, though, you're like, oh, what's happening, this and that. And then, I told my mom, made dua, this and that, did the relevant stuff. And in the moment, you think like, oh, like feelings kind of overtake you. Just like, yeah, she's probably the perfect one, this and that, right? But then, subhanAllah, I remember like when you pray and you make dua, and I could remember distinctly, like you have like you're disappointed in the heart, this and that. But then, so I remember I woke up the next day, I was like, the best I've felt in my whole life. I'm like, what just happened? You know what I mean? I just woke up. But then afterwards you start like when Allah doesn't plan for you, it's for the best of you. But then I start seeing like her in ways that I'm just like, this is not someone I want to marry. Like just overnight. SubhanAllah, right? And alhamdulillah, like she's married.
But you're lucky, man. You're lucky that Allah gave you that.
Exactly. So it's for the best, like for the best of everyone, right?
Yeah,
she's probably
alhamdulillah.
like, very happy marriage, this and that. And
Yeah,
Alhamdulillah.
which is important.
That's what I mean. Like in the moment, you think things, but then
the end, it's different.
It's different, SubhanAllah. I know you got a bit too personal, but I'm just saying.
No,
I
know, it's being real, bro.
Yeah,
like,
because I know people that are struggling, like to get married. So I don't mind saying it. Like,
dude, like but that's when you finally like
exactly.
Look, all of us, we gift ourselves, man. Like that's your contribution, a real contribution to you've gifted that. You've trusted me, you've trusted Malik, and you've trusted the people with a part of you, and that's beautiful. Honestly, that's so beautiful to see.
To take like, I'm just saying, like, to have trust in Allah.
Yeah.
Because things that you perceive are bad for you. Like I remember telling my mom, like, why is this happening?
Yeah.
But then I'm so.
But you see, like what was interesting was I was just thinking, like, well, what about those people who still think that she's good for them? And they never got that. And that's difficult. That's a real issue to deal with. That if she was good for me, why didn't it happen? Oh, I still think that. Or Allah hasn't. Like I've asked Allah, and I still think she's good for me. But why is Allah doing that? Or whatever. And that's something to really. Again, I just say to people, just sit with it. Right? Like I sit with myself, and there's so many things that I like that. It might not necessarily be the exact same thing, and it might be, and I might just be trying to defend myself.
I think just to connect it to the 2 points here.
Yeah, connect it
to your story.
Please
and
connect and
to essentially
open up
to the whole workshop of knowing yourself. For me, I think it leads to a position of pure tawakkul and reliance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you see yourself, like with the quote that you share quite often of Ali radiallahu an, man arifa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbahu, the one who knows himself knows his Lord, right? So you see the perfect placement of everything. That you in the moment of difficulty or someone you're getting to know, you might think, this is it. This is the person for myself. And then you pray that istiqara and Allah changes your heart and that feeling. And it reminds you that Allah is in control, right? Like one day she's your world, the next day, like, something else. But so there's a couple of stories I want to mention. There's one that Sidi Michael Sugaj was sharing with us with Aisha Gray Henry. So he mentions a story, I think, in the book where she catching a flight, and I think she missed her flight, so then she had to go to another airport, and she was racing against time because she had to catch that flight, and she had just made it, right? And so if she was to miss that flight, the next flight, apparently, I think it crashed. So it was saying she was literally running for her life, catching that flight. And I was watching a video the other day on Facebook Live. A sister was mentioning that she got stuck in traffic, which usually there's no traffic on that road. And for 20 minutes, like she was so agitated, and she was with her kids, dropping her kids off. And then when she dropped off her kids, she was going to the mall to return some stuff or something. She was like, if I came 20 minutes earlier, there was a robbery in the shop. Right. So when you have that pure tawakkul, you're just like, Allah is in control, that's what it leads you to, personally. Yeah.
And even any hardship that you face, the only way you can look at it is like with optimism and having the faith in Allah. Like even like Allah is reality, the world around us, the material world is not reality. I think do you guys there's, I forgot the theory called, but there's I actually forget what I'm saying, but it's like that theory where they've started to find out things in the past what you thought happened in the past wasn't actually occurring. I can't remember the theory, but it all kind of intertwines with the idea of just having faith in Allah in the material world.
For sure. And how often do you, go through a difficulty, and then 2 years back, you look back at that difficulty and it was like, that was the best thing that's ever happened in my life.
100%.
How often does that happen? And you're able to then connect the dots of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had in store for you. Whether it's through your studies, whether it's through, your family or marriage or whatever it may be. It's just like it's the proper placement. You just see Allah working in everything.
I don't know if I said this in a previous podcast, but I've said this to a lot of my friends. I remember I was in high school. I was in year 8, year 9, because I wasn't relatively practicing, but alhamdulillah, I had like close Muslim friends, so would pray here and there and stuff. I remember my friend telling another friend, and I wasn't there, and he ended up telling, like, kind of whispered it or mentioned a conversation where I was there, and I overheard. I remember he was like, out of all of us, Tanzim is the one that will be the least practicing. I remember this like clearly, right? So he said this to his friend, right, who's my friend, and then I overheard it. I remember I'm like, damn, that's heavies, right? And subhanAllah, like, that was in year 9, right? Who would have thought I'd be making like a podcast about the deen, And those friends are now like struggling with the deen. I'm like, subhanAllah, like how Allah, like, just at that point in time, you can't make judgments, but then subhanAllah, like how Allah has,
it's one of my favorite quotes. One of my favorite quotes by Imam Siraj Wahaj. It's like, it's not how you start the race, it's how you finish it.
Subhanallah. Right? Yeah.
So we can start off as that kid who is a troublemaker, who is not seen as a religious type, but we will ask for Husn al-Khatim.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing, like, because, who here or who in this world can say that they didn't have a past? And who in that very moment still can say, like, yes, you do shukr for like a blessing that's blatantly in front of you, but you also do a tawbah for the fact that you can't really respond accordingly. Like, you can't respond. How can you thank Allah for your blessings, man? Like what you just mentioned about where He put you to, because those are the guys, like, there's certainly a lesson to learn from that because of the judgments and then where Allah puts them in. But their end isn't, they haven't finished their story is still going on. Everyone's got that thing, and I think that's why in all of that there's just lessons to take, but it's essentially the assignment is you, man, in this world. Like, you're the assignment.
I know, like, people that went through I know personally, like, they went through a lot of struggles, but they weren't practicing, but they went through such a struggle, like, the family in turmoil. I don't know, situations happened where Allah put them in a place where they had to go to the mosque and beg and make dua to Allah and had to pray like all night. This is a guy that's not been practicing, so subhanAllah, like, at that, someone might be looking at that situation saying, he's got a messed up life, this and that, his family is going through a lot of struggles. But in a way, subhanAllah, like, Allah actually like pushes you to be closer to Him in that situation, out of that, just to get you into the mosque, to get you making dua to Him, to connecting with Him. So
I think it comes back to also perception, like one of the hadiths in the Arba'een of Imam Nawawi, that there are those who are on the path of Jannah until they're a handspan away from Jannah, and then they become the people of hell.
SubhanAllah.
And then there are those who are the people of hell, and they're a handspan away from hell, and then they become the people of Jannah. All right. So as you were saying, we might see people in different situations in their lives, but they're people probably Ahl al-Jannah. And I think as Muslims,
we walk around with it who made it.
Yeah.
Made
no
nothing,
way.
no guarantee.
No way.
And that's why, like, irrespective of which type of a Muslim you are, you wake up in the morning, say Alhamdullilah alladhi ahyana. All praises to God who gave me life. Ba'da ma amatana, after He caused me to die. Wa ilayhi nushur, and to Him is the resurrection. And then before you go to sleep, you say Allahumma bismika amutu wa ahya. We're all saying the same thing, no matter how much of a practicing Muslim. That's why these terms like practicing are so like plastic. Practicing in what sense, man? There's people out there who don't wear hijab, and she's probably remembering God far more than the guy with the beard and is doing a talk on knowing yourself. You know what I mean? Like, it's just and with that, there's this humbling that takes place, and I think, I've like, Allahu Alam, like, I've only had so much experience on this planet, but I'll tell you something that from what I've experienced, it's just a humbling process, man. And if you don't humble yourself, you'll get humbled, man. Like, in anything you think that, I figured it out, boom, Allah just poof, straight under the carpet, and all of a sudden you're like, what just happened? Life.
And it's happening throughout the hadith and the Quran as well. Like, there are so many instances like, a prostitute goes to Jannah.
Yeah.
A man that killed 100 people goes to Jannah. Like it's shifting your world. Like stop judging people.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
yeah, right. And when the other one in Bidat al-Hidayah, remember the scholar who says he comes to God and he says, Allah, oh Allah, I sought this knowledge for you. Allah says, no, you didn't. You sought this knowledge so people could call you a scholar, and they called you a scholar. You got what you wanted. The next one comes, oh, I'm a martyr. I'm a martyr in your way. It says, no, you wanted to be called a martyr. They called you a martyr, but it wasn't in my way. It's for yourself. And that's why there's that dua that we read, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an ushriku bika. Like, oh Allah, oh Allah, I seek refuge in you. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an ushriku, and that I do shirk with you. Wa ana a'lam, like, and that I know. Wa astaghfiruka bima lima la a'lam, and I do a tawbah for that which the shirk that I've been doing and I'm not aware of it. So I'm doing a'udhu billah for the shirk that I did, because this happens, you know, it's easy. The hidden shirk is just there, man. Like, for a moment you think, yeah, I know, and you just get put in your place. And that's why I'm even more fortunate, and like I do, you know, I try to do that shukr, that because this type of a project, like I said, I'm just another subject in the class. Like, I'm doing again the workshop again. I've had one of my friends came to the workshop 5 times. People have come to it 2 times. I myself did it when I did it with my teacher 3 times. so anyone who comes to it, just the second time you come. One of my friends came 5 times, and he said I see these people responding at the end saying, oh, it's an amazing workshop, and I just feel like, oh, I know all this stuff. And he said, and I've done it 5 times and I'm gaining so much. I'm looking at them thinking, you haven't got a clue. Like, you're just starting out. Do it another 2 times and watch what happens.
Yeah.
That's why I actually teach it now. First time I did it, I thought, The second time I was like, whoa. And then every time I ever read about it, I was like, oh, that's me. That's me. That's me. That's me. And like, I need to sort this out. I need to sort that out.
That's fun.
So, yeah, man, it's so vast. So much.
Yeah, that was heavy. Like,
yeah.
I think like even the idea of like intention, like all those examples you brought up, you know, people becoming scholars for the people and they go Jahannam. It's like Allah, all he looks at is like the intention. And even like with the example I gave with Aisha anha, you know, scooping from the bottom of the pot, like it's in all intention.
Yeah.
Kind of, that's all that Allah, not like everything that kind of manifests on a physical or material.
Yeah.
It's like it comes down to the metaphysical, the intention, which is like embedded into your like consciousness.
And what's the hadith? Inna Allah la yanzur ila suwarikum wa la ajsadikum. Allah doesn't look at your forms, your images. There goes Instagram. Suwarikum wa la ajsadikum, and know your almost like your nouns, right? It doesn't look at who you are and how you, like, in that sense. He says, وَلَكِنْ يَنْظُرُ إِلَى صُوَرِكُمْ وَلَكِنْ يَنْظُرُ إِلَى قُلُوبِكُمْ وَأَعْمَالِكُمْ. But rather he looks at your hearts and your actions. He looks at your verbs. What are you actually doing? Even and how you're doing that. With what intention, like you said.
There was that lady that prayed all night, but then was bad to the neighbors and stuff, and Rasul said like she's going Jahannam. Like, even, you know, that's an example of just misdirecting our intention, I guess. And at the end of the day, Allah just looks at you, and this kind of fits in with the 4 temperaments, everything. It's like you as on a metaphysical level.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah.
I think if anything you're going to take away from this, and I think through studying with our teachers, when we did the Arba'in of Imam Nawawi with Sheikh Hamza, and I'm just going to reiterate your point about intentions. In a'mal min niyat, right? That all actions are based on their intentions. And Sheikh Hamza's commentary on that was essentially all we have control of is our intentions. That's it. The outcome, Allah controls. Right. That's just incredible. Yeah. Because that's
real, man.
That's real.
Just take that in from home. Like, that's real.
Yeah.
Like, if you intend, Boys in the Cave, this podcast, to change the world, then on Yawm al-Qiyamah, you will get to gift that, and that will be gifted to you, bro. And you'll turn to the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and say, I did this for your legacy.
Well, like, even if you have one
irrespective of if it changed anyone, bro. Irrespective of if it changed anyone. This is free and beautiful our deen is, and like, how can people make this thing ugly, man? How can people make this exclusive?
I'll like just you brought up Boys in the K. I remember when we started off, like this brings me like those memories. Like starting off, you're like it was just a thought. You got some brothers and like, all right, let's make it happen. I remember like because at that time we weren't too familiar with the podcast format, but we know that was like the best way to go about the stuff we wanted to talk about. So we're like, look, end of the day, even if because we didn't know if our marketing would be good enough to get anyone to kind of listen, because we thought everyone's onto YouTube and all that, and I'm like, even if we get 5 people, 10 people. I reckon at least the content's out there, and that's what, like, inshallah, we get rewarded for the intention. And I remember, like, with that sincerity, I remember, alhamdulillah, first guest was like Muhammad.yea, Dr. Muhammad.yea, and subhanAllah, Allah opens doors you can never ever like we never, because I remember like at that time we were getting started, Dr. Muhammad.yea was in Canada, and he was like, he really influenced me, and he also like inspired me to do this as well, right? So then I remember like we had this idea of doing Boys in the Cave. It was like already 3-4 months in. I see a video of Dr. Gillan saying, "Oh, I'm going to Queensland to study medicine." I'm like, what's going on? And he ended up going. And then I remember I'm like, okay, it's still difficult. He's in Queens. I don't know if you can get him on. And my friend who was in the MSA, he was the president. He's like, oh. I bumped into Eid on Eid prayer out of all days, subhanAllah. I remember after the prayer, he just told me, oh, we'll bring Dr. Gillan down. I'm like, whoa, subhanAllah, are you serious? Yeah. And I remember I was like, do you want to message him? Because I want to, you want him on the podcast? I'm like, yeah. And I sent a voice message to his, and then he agreed.
MashaAllah.
Can you believe that? Like, I know people think like, oh, it just happened, but from someone from Canada, which you never thought would come to your doorstep or whatever, to like Allah opens doors in ways, and then from then on, like alhamdulillah, we've been able to engage with the right people, get contacts. Even like you would think like one guest, oh, he's just a guest. Alhamdulillah, we had a good conversation, but he just opened doors to guests that we yearn to have a conversation with, like. And then we're still alhamdulillah growing exponentially, and we've got even bigger, better plans, but sometimes you forget the blessings Allah gave you along the journey. And it kind of like I mentioned like the stats thing, like sometimes you get caught up with it, but then you're just like, what a subhanAllah, like what a journey like it's been, and Allah, it's proof of Allah.
And now you're sitting with Mohammed Isaaq.
Yes, subhanAllah, like having this, like I would never like have fathomed having these sort of conversations as well. And end of the day, we had deep with my friends like Josh, Raphael, and others who were part of this initially. We just had conversations just raw about deen, and we knew that we had the haqq, like we had the truth. Yeah. All this science nonsense that like I don't want to. I mean like scientism, not science, right? Yeah. Like the perspective of looking things. I'm like, this is batil. Like this does not make any sense, right? But when you study in depth the spiritual side of things as well, you just like this needs to be talked about more. And I felt that there was too much, I don't know, sectarianism on Muslim podcast platforms and just in platforms in general. I'm like, we just need everyone. It doesn't matter about Ahl Sunnah obviously, but like just get everyone on and have these sort of conversations. And Allah's just facilitate. I was telling you at the beginning of this episode, we use like one Yeti mic for 4 or 5 people.
Brilliant.
Ask Dr. Yelani. You had just stuck this one mic, and then now like Allah's like open doors. We're just uni students trying to get by, but
good man. And just staying busy, like. Just stay busy. Like, what does Imam Shafi say? And also it's reflected in the Western tradition as well, that, the devil makes work for idle hands. And he says, the one who doesn't busy himself with good will be made busy with bad. So, and just stay here, man. Like, keep doing good, bro. Like, honestly, because the nature of a human being is we are active beings. We're not passive beings, man. And like sometimes we fall into being passive, but if you have that energy in you, you're an active person. And
even for yourself, you'd be running workshops, going
like that's why I go. Like that's why I do a lot of things. One of the reasons why is because I just know I have that energy, and part of it is also like a type of a gratitude for that energy. Saying, Allah, all right, you've given me this energy, you've given me life, you've given me a day. What am I going to do with that day? What can I do for you? And then he shows you in the day what he wants for you. You wake up in the morning and Malik says, we got a podcast to do. And you're like, all right, Allah wants me to do a podcast. Like people before have said to me, like, do a podcast or do this stuff. Like even on radio, they offered radio stations. But when Allah wants you to be on it, you'll be on it. And if it's in Australia, it's in Australia. But the beauty in this whole process is just, it's it's just a beautiful, like, it just reminds me of Dawood alayhi salam, and and Allah says that a few of my slaves are thankful, and Dawood alayhi salam says, how can I thank you, Allah, when even my ability to thank you is from you?
Subhanallah.
And then Allah says, now Dawood, that is gratitude.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's what I remember Sheikh Faraz, one of my teachers, once said. He goes, and there comes a point when it comes to with Allah that all you can just say all you can just say for Allah, to Allah, is just what? Praise Him in the way if we've been shown to praise Him, is you just got in those moments, you just say subhanAllah, Alhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. Subhanallah. It's just these terms are something to think about. Subhanallah, like, glory be to you. Subhanallah, glory be to Allah, walhamdulillah, and all praise. You're gonna big up anyone, you're gonna praise anyone. Alhamdulillah, it's His. Not just it goes to Him, it's His. Alhamdulillah. Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah. And there's nothing worthy of worship, there's nothing worthy of our time, there's nothing worthy of our priority except God. Allahu Akbar. And He is better than all of it. And even Allahu Akbar is an interesting one, because generally the Ism Tafdeel, Akbar, generally in Arabic, it's like you have something after it. Akbar from what? Bigger than what? Ajmal, the most beautiful, like most beautiful from what? And one of our teachers said when we were in Jordan, he goes, Akbar, when we say Allahu Akbar, what's understood by that is He is greater than ... And that ... is whatever you're thinking of. Like, anything you can ever think of, you just say Allahu Akbar, because you can't, like, it's just anything that you think of, just Allahu Akbar. And
or when thoughts are racing your mind while you're praying, right?
Yeah. Just whatever you're thinking of in your prayer, you just say Allahu Akbar. Allah's better than that. What you were doing before that. Allah's greater than that. Allah's greater than that.
But also, I was just thinking,
and the whole change. Sorry, the whole thing changes, man. Like, it really does. It becomes a beautiful love affair with God. Your whole life becomes a love affair. It's just a beautiful conversation going on. And I will remember reading, like, in Salah, like, we read Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, like, you're saying, glory be to you, Allah, wa bihamdika, I'm like, to praises to you, your praise. And then the second one here, wa tabarakasmuka, I always thought, this is an interesting one. What does that mean? Wa tabarakasmuka. Anyone never thought about what tabarakasmuka means? What tabarak, like, what, and how blessed? Tabarak ismuka is your name. And the most, like, when you're in love, what's the most sweetest thing to you about the one you love? Is their name?
Hearing their name.
Like, hearing their name or saying their name. It's beautiful, isn't it? That's why your mom's name is just a beautiful name, and it's one of the most favorite names. So when you're saying Subhan, it's like a love letter. Like, you just, someone who's in love, it's like, oh, and your name is also this and also that. Someone's name is mentioned, like when we were in school and her name is mentioned and your face goes red. It's like, dude, what happened to you, bro? You're like, nah, nothing, bro. But you know what's going on because someone said a name, right? And it's like, Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa tabarakasmuka. How beautiful is your name? Right? It's like, Allah. It's just, and yeah, I hate talking, that's why I don't like podcasts, because what Hafiz says, your words are the house you build for yourself to live in. So we say these things as if we've experienced them to its entirety, but even having said all of that, still a loser. So
we all love it.
We've hit the 2 hour 30 minutes. I think it's probably
wow. Did we speak for 2.5 hours?
Yeah, it flies by. So
are you serious?
Like 2 hours 30 minutes.
Unless you have to be somewhere. One's tuning into this one. Alhamdulillah.
They'll stay on for more, bro.
No, you'll be surprised. A lot of listeners, like proper podcasts, they love like big episodes. Downloads have been the big episode ones, because it's more like you're being more authentic and real.
Yes.
So people want to they'll be hooked.
Let's cut it down then.
You're gonna get for another hour now.
Before I want to ask you though, one question before we wrap up.
Yeah.
You have to be anywhere? No.
No, we got time.
Yeah, we got time.
All right, inshallah. So I want to ask you one question. Actually two. So you guys mentioned a lot of people that you've been taught by your teachers, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and many others. Did you guys study together? Like the same?
I studied with him.
I studied under him. That's my Sheikh. Astaghfirullah.
But you've been in the same circles.
Can I use his mic? I just want to use his mic for the barakah. No, sorry. Yeah.
But yeah, like, do you have any certain experiences you had?
Allah. I was coming. sorry, man.
No, it's
Don't get us started.
Yeah, you got us started, man.
But you mentioned some, big names.
Yeah.
I think maybe Dr. Malik.yea studied under Sheikh Hamza in Rihla program and all that. But you've studied under some big names. So what's your kind of experiences? Because a lot of people listeners been watching, or listening to talks of your teachers as well. So
Bismillah. Muhammad.
I
think I'll talk from it like as an Australian living here in Sydney. I think a lot of the times, you kind of see these teachers only through YouTube, and they're so far away, and so we don't have that ease of access like the Americans and some of our brothers in the UK do. And so for us, it's essentially we have to go seek them out. And alhamdulillah, like the Rihla programs are very accessible. Yeah. But even before I went to Rihla, I did the Umrah program with Sheikh Hamza in 2014. And that's open to everyone. And then studying in Jordan as well. Mohammed went to the Rihla before me, and he got me on to the Rihla the year after.
2 years after.
2 years after. 2016, yeah.
And I didn't get him on. I mean, Allah wanted you on there.
MashaAllah.
Sorry.
What was the question?
Just like your experiences with the big teachers.
Honestly, one of the things I've realized from this whole entire experience with these teachers, it's incredible to sit under the feet of Sheikh Hamza and Imam Zaid and Sheikh Abdul Hakim and Dr. Umar. They're incredible human beings, people who are not only articulating for us an experience, but they've lived it, right? And so when they do articulate it, it feels so real, like, this is what I'm experiencing, and giving us the depth and explaining the tradition to us and packaging it in a way that is so accessible to us, right? And which is why I've always, enjoyed listening to Sheikh Hamza. But one of the things that you do learn, if you want to get to that level, and I guarantee Muhammad would agree with this, is that you can't maintain, or grow as a person if you just seek after these big shiukh. They have plenty of shiukh that we don't know, right? They're no names, right? And so studying with them, you realize you have to go seek, just through Mizan, for example. We've opened up the doors to our local teachers, and we have some incredible local teachers. Sheikh Wissam, Sheikh Haysam Faraji, Sheikh Ahmed Abdo, Sheikh Ibrahim Abdullah, and the Sheikh Hassan al-Satuhi, like the list goes on. They're absolutely incredible human beings that have done the time. Sheikh Ahmed spent 10 years in Tarim, right? And they're coming from different traditions as well in terms of where they've studied. Sheikh Hassan studied in Al-Azhar, Sheikh Wissam at Mahad al-Fatih, Allah Musta'an, Sheikh Haysam at Tarim, etc. And we have these incredible human beings amongst us, right? Yet we're looking outside, our communities. And so we have to exhaust and use up our teachers here locally. And I think that's one of the things that they taught me, right? I was seeking out, but they taught me to seek within, like seek your teachers here locally. Which is, subhanAllah, which is why they're so incredible. They don't call to themselves. Any teacher's role essentially is to hold your hand and to place you right in front of Allah and the Rasul Sallallahu. That's their journey. Like we spent time with, when we were in Jordan with Habib Umar, and the first time meeting her, he's just an incredible human being, subhanAllah. And just standing there and when people take on the tariqah, for example, you don't see him calling to himself. You never hear any of the Ba'alawi brothers saying, come join our tariqah. you just observe people like Habib Omar, you observe people like Habib Khadim, right? And you're like, that's the kind of people I want to be. And so that whole thing about modeling yourself against these inheritors of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, all right? And so if you're someone here living in Tin, we have those inheritors of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam here locally. Yeah, so I think that's been my experience, and that's what I've learned, just being out and about, and traveling and, you know, meeting some of these teachers, and Alhamdulillah.
Even you mentioned like just your interaction with them and them helping you on the journey to follow the way of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I remember like I was really contemplating this, that you know, you have scientists, you have philosophers, etc. And, you know, through uni, I've been engaging and had the, you know, opportunity to meet these kind of people. But you're just like, I don't know, like, why do I want to be these people? This makes, like, they ooze something that doesn't feel right on a spiritual level. And then when you're at, like, Islamic class, for example, you sit with a scholar who's passionate and he exemplifies perfect character. You're just like, this is where the heart should be. And this is not just as a Muslim, like everyone who is sincere, regardless of faith, should be sitting in this. And really, it's about connecting with the self, and kind of goes back to everything with, you know, the 4 temperaments.
I'll tell you, with like my personal experience and coming on the path was just looking at one person's face, and that did everything for me. Habib Khadim. Just like gazing in his face. Like, I know this is going to sound very kind of airy-fairy, but this man, like, I looked at him like, who is this man? Like, he spoke Arabic, and at that time, my Arabic was like horrible. And I was looking at him like, who is this man? He came here to Sydney, right? And I was at a moment in my life where I was like kind of trying to find my place and like trying to strengthen my connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this man comes across, and I'm like, this is a complete human being. Like, you know, when we think about the heirs of the Prophet, like, I literally saw that. And then kind of led me on to kind of, you know, research more. But I think we are all looking for that. We are looking for that depth. We are looking for, you know, a strong relationship and connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And these men and women come along in our lives and, you know, just hold our hand and, you know, just make the path easy for us. And that's something that I observed with a lot of people. And I think one of the other things is sometimes you have experiences that forces you to be real, and even forces you to reflect on your own existence with Allah, and, you know, saying, we all hear like, what's the purpose of life? You know, Qadi Yasin was here back in the days. He had those famous talks on the purpose of life. You know, sometimes it just sound like these plastic phrases or words, but when you really reflect on it, a lot of times that happens when you have a near-death experience, or you've had a person close to you that's passed away, and you're like, man, I'm going there. Yeah. And so you're forced to like, what am I doing? Like, everything in this world is, you know, finite. Like, I'm going to go back to my maker. How do I want to go back to my maker? How can I go back to my maker? You know, what's the path? How do I get closer to Allah? You know, because we're all going to be asked those questions in the grave. Who's your Lord? Who's your Prophet? And what's your book? And for the mu'min, it's an easy answer because you live that, right? And so when you're forced to be real with yourself, and I think this is why, if you haven't had that near-death experience, alhamdulillah, but we also have that for a lot of people that feel that void, and they just want to fill that void. And a lot of times what's missing is Allah and His Prophet. And when you have that, like, I'm not saying I have it. I'm working towards it. It's a work in progress. But alhamdulillah, like these people, locally and internationally, are the inheritors of the Prophet, and their role is essentially to make our path easier.
How about Sidi Isaaq? What's your kind of experience?
Wow, we need to do a separate podcast on that, bro. Yeah. You know, I mean, I know your questions about what's the experience, but honestly, I feel like you can't ever really sum up the experience. I think I actually prefer to just stay silent on that. And if anyone takes anything from that, then that you'll take far more from my silence on it than my speech on it. And what I would like to share with people is what was something that struck me once upon a time. I think I took more from that. I think anyone will take more from that is this. There's a situation that once happened where there was the Prophet ﷺ was doing tawaf around the Kaaba, and this man came with the intention to kill the Prophet ﷺ. Astaghfirullah, yeah. And he had like a dagger or something. And as he came behind the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ turned around, put his hand on his chest, and he said, "Oh, so and so, what is it that you were going to be doing there?" That man, he dropped it, and he said, "I don't know." And he just became a Muslim. And he left that place with the intention to kill the Prophet ﷺ, astaghfirullah, and he left that moment as a tabi'. Take that in for a moment. Oh, sorry, as a sahabi, afwan. As a sahabi. He left. His belief at that point was more than all of our beliefs put together. That's how strong his belief was. A man. What was his interaction? He had a moment where the Rasul ﷺ gazed upon him and placed his hand upon his heart. That changed his life, man. That changed it. That changed his end, bro. It was like more than any of us. Just from one experience. Where there's the evil eye, there's the good eye. The healing gaze. The gaze that raises men from being the normal men to being the best of men. And you know that gaze was so powerful that anyone who then, that gaze then fell upon from the person who saw that became a tabi'. And then the one who saw them became a taba tabi', whose gaze from the tabi', the gaze fell upon another person, that became the taba tabi'. So you have a generation of people that all of a sudden are being called the best of people, the best of generations, all because of what? The Rasul ﷺ gaze fell upon them. So my question once upon a time, really, I asked myself, and I sort of asked, I'd leave it with those who are listening, and again to myself, really, all these years later, is where's that gaze? How can I get it today? Where can I get that? Because I need it, man. I need it, bro. Like, that's what it was. When I left, I didn't go out to like seek knowledge. I went out to fix my heart. It's a shame, I'm still trying to fix it, but what happened in the process was a lot happened in that time. So people say to you, "What did you gain?" I say, "I ain't got a clue. I can't really tell you what I gained, but I'll tell you what I lost, though. I'll tell you what was replaced." And when you go out and you realize, and Allah tells us that these the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets and the awliya, the men of God. And you know, there was another hadith I'll also leave the listeners with. This is that, you know, a person is on the faith of his companion. So the Prophet said, "So let each of you look at who you take as a friend." And I thought to myself, if I want to be from the friends of God, the quickest way to get there is become friends with them. Because you are on the faith of your friend. You're on the deen of your friend. So if you can become friends with the friends of God, you'll just make it way easier. So with these two, that's when I stepped out. And I just decided that I'm done with this YouTube. Like, I just want to go and sit with them once. I just need the gaze once. I just need one. Just one gaze is all it takes. Right? And that's all you need, man. And we went out with that, and the rest is, you know, the rest is funny, because then people say your name. You went out because of their names. Their names are made because of their teachers' names. Their teachers are names, and everyone's name is being made up because of the Rasul ﷺ. And all of a sudden, your name, and people start saying, "Oh yeah," in the podcast, Muhammad Isaaq, and you're like, every time I ever hear that, I'm like, what is going on? But I just, like, you know, just kick it out. Like, don't dwell on it, because otherwise it just gives me anxiety. It's just like, whatever, get over it. One of our teachers in Tanzim, he just said, he goes, "Get over yourself. It's not about you. It's never about you." So it's easier to just let go of it. Just get over it. Fix what yourself, what you need to fix. But point being is look what happens, man. It's transformative. That's what this deen is. This deen is transformative. I remember once one of our teachers said, he goes, "Muslims today are just sitting, are people like sitting at a restaurant. And they've got all this fantastic menu. It's called Islam. The restaurant's called Islam, and there's all these wonderful dishes. Everyone's like, 'Oh wow, check out our menu. Look, we've got this, we've got that, we've got this, we've got that,' and they're not eating a single thing."
Subhanallah.
Whoa, they're just inheriting the whole thing. And even your inheritance, you didn't inherit. Really, you don't know anything. That's what people say to me. You know, I always say, like, at 21, I became Muslim. They say, "Oh, were you not Muslim before?" I was like, I was a Muslim before. but did you ever do a shahada? And in your shahada, if I say, did you ever do a shahada, is, did you ever witness? Did you ever testify? Did a day come in your life where you said, I bear witness that there is no God except the one true God? Did you ever say that? If you didn't say that, and then I used to see these guys in the UK, is the last one I'll share. I see these guys in the UK, and they used to have this crazy love for their teachers. I used to look at them and I used to say, oh my God, these guys, it's just too much, man. It's Allah, it's Rasul, like what's all this crazy love for your teachers? And then I made dua, and honestly, if anyone wants to know, like make this dua, just turn to Allah and just say, Allah, what's all that? What's all that about? What's he talking about? This nadhara, this one gaze that you get. Does it still exist? And can I get it? Have that conversation sincerely. Can I get that? How do I get it? When you start that conversation, and a year later, I was like one of those guys. And then one day I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh. Like I ordered the same glasses as one of my teacher. One of my teachers. So it came in the post, and I opened it up and I was there putting it on. And I was like just looking at myself in the mirror. Like I was a young kid. I was like looking at myself. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I fell into the trap. Same as these guys. So I put it back in the package and I sent it back off. I didn't want that, because you got to stay on the goal, man. But in the process, I realized something had happened. A transformation had taken place. And I can't. I hate the claims. Like I hate saying, "Oh, transformation had taken place," because then you have to live by that. So really. So that's why I didn't want to say like, "Oh, what was the experience like?" And we can speak. Like I said, we can really do a podcast on it, man. I'll give you like gems of stories, man. Like you just go on and on. Like,
just Medina days.
Really, just the Medina alone is just crazy. But I'll say to you this, man. That if you really want to know what any of that all is about and what it's like to be with those people. Like when I was in Morocco, and there was a sister that I knew from the UK, and she was like, we used to do charity work years ago, and she phoned me and she was like, Isaaq, I heard about this Rihla program. She said, but people are telling me it's these Sufis and saying don't go on it. And she said, but I want to know, what do you think? And I said to her, look, I'm just gonna tell you, like, I'll tell you about my experience, but that was my experience alone. That might not be your experience. I said, the only way you can do anything about it is go for yourself. If they're deviant Sufis, come back, warn others. But if what they're saying is true, if what is available to experience and this ultimate felicity is there, or whatever, right, in the suhbah of the great men of God, whose presence is a dhikr, right? Just being in their presence is a dhikr. Right, transformative just to be in their presence. Like when Shaykh Hamza once was sitting in the presence of Marabt al-Hajj, and Shaykh Hamza said, I was sitting there and I'm thinking, it's like, he said, I felt a peace, the peace of which I had only ever felt in Medina at the Rawdah. He said, so I looked around and there was this young man who was sitting next to me, Yahya Rodish, you may have heard of him. Yeah, back, as he said, back in the day. And he said, and I looked over to see if Yahya was feeling the same thing. So I looked over, and at that point, Yahya opened his eyes and looked at me. And we realized we're both feeling it. And wallah, like, my thing is if that's all true, and all these things, like Shaykh Hamza once said, I was by the head of Marabt al-Hajj and I could smell musk from his hair. And he's living in the desert, and he could smell musk off his head. If you're listening right now, go test it. Marabt al-Hajj is gone now, but find the equivalence, right? Allah yarhamuhu. But these people, like, if this is all true and what people are claiming, and if like the Rasul came and transformed the world, why is your life not getting transformed? Like, what's different here? What are you doing differently? And people want to find awliya as well, especially people want to find the men of God. Honestly, people don't even respect the walis at home. They're called mom and dad. If you don't if you're not kissing your mom's hand, what are you doing kissing like this other sheikh's hand? Like, your priorities all over the place. You don't, and that's why Allah says, "La in shakartum la azidannakum." If you're thankful, I'll give you an increase. If you're grateful, I'll increase you. Show your gratitude where you are, right? But then I also remember this one teacher said to us, and I know I said the last thing was like six things ago. There's one teacher in 2013. He goes, the deen is like an ocean. He goes, there's some people who go there and they just touch stand by the shore, put the feet inside it, and then they go out and they're like, ooh, I experienced Islam. There's others.
Once.
And then there's others who are just observing it from far, saying, wow, wonderful Islam. Right? Hella passive to the whole thing. And then there's others out there who are going a little bit more, and they're coming back with a few things. Then there's some of them who are just running in and just diving straight into the thing. And the more deeper you go, the more jewels you get.
Wow.
So, and I remember hearing that thinking, can I go? And you just go and like I said, it's not about them. Like if people see, don't hear Mohammed Isaaq, like, what are you doing? Like, forget that. Don't even listen to that. And maybe I'm saying it to myself, like the ones, just go out, just seek the messenger of God. Allah said they have the inheritance is with the scholars. Go sit with the scholars. Say, Allah, show me the inheritance when you go there. Like, but people don't they don't have this active approach to, like, they don't believe in it. When one Sheikh Muhammad Yaqubi's, I think it was his uncle, back in, like, I don't know what, in the early, like, maybe 60, 70 years ago, he was in some place and and there was this convoy of French soldiers going by, and he said he remembered this hadith or this saying, I believe it's a hadith. It says that never do 40 people come together except that from them is a person of God. A wali is from them. Never do 40 people come together except there's a wali amongst them. So he said to Allah, Allah, if there's a wali, there's more than 40 people here. So wherever the wali is, show me him. He said, as the convoy was coming across, there was a man from Africa who was a part of the convoy. He just came off it. He got off the convoy. He walked up to him and he said, there is one amongst them.
SubhanAllah.
And he went back. Well, and if you've ever taken the journey out, these stories, the first time I heard it, I was like, did you hear that? But when you start taking the journey out, it's like you have that smile, that cheeky one he has. And you just read Signs on the Horizon. If you want to know what it means to sit with the men of God, there's a book called Signs on the Horizon. It's because these men are the meeting place. They call them the signs on the horizon because they're the meeting place of the heavens and the earth. They're just like you and me, yet they're so heavenly. So there's a horizon, right? The meeting place of the heavens and the earth. So they're just earthly like us, but they're heavenly as well. But again, my thing is just try it. Go out and try it. But sincerely, if you're there to test stuff, to prove a hypothesis, because you're like, oh, these guys, they probably aren't what they really are, then whatever, man. Like, that it is what it is. It's for you what you think of it. And it's what you were speaking about earlier on. And this isn't an alien concept to Islam. Allah says, I'm in the opinion of my slave. What you bring to the table is what you bring to the court. If you bring to the court of Allah His rahmah, inshallah, that's what I'm riding on anyway. But yeah, it's so if you believe in these people and you they actually say that, and then, so again, to go into the specifics, I can give you all these stories about the teachers that won my heart over, but there's teachers out there who are your Shamses. Like Rumi could speak about Shams all day. Everybody else is like, who's Shams? People probably right now listening, who's Shams? My point is do what Rumi did, like really start that journey with yourself, and Allah will give you those people. But those people only come when you start to like react accordingly to your situation, to your environment. If you're happy with what you're doing, then why is he going to change it up? Yeah. If you're happy in your little life of chasing after 2 cars, I see, and it's just a post on Instagram today, a story where there's a picture of 2 cars in a house, and it's like, life goals. Is your life goal in this world, this spirit that you have inside you, in this bodily being, to just secure a house and 2 cars? Sit with that. Sit with your stories on Insta.
Allah's given you all this, and
and it's just what you're after.
Consciousness, everything.
It's just what we're after. Is this it?
2 cars.
Right, and that's why Imam Ali radiallahu anhu says that this dunya is 5 things. It's what you eat, what you drink, what you wear, what you experience, and what you smell. He says, as for what you drink, he said, this dunya, the best thing to drink in this world, in this dunya, is water, and it's free. You share it with animals. He says the best thing that you can wear is silk, and that's what comes at the other end of a worm. He says the best thing that you can eat is honey, and that's the vomit of bees. The best thing that you can perfume yourself with is musk, and that's the sweating of a gazelle, or the mucus of a gazelle, or it's actually from the testicles of a cat. There's good sense that come from that. Don't ask me how I know. It's from I didn't test that one. It's pick books. We were there trying to work this word out, and then we found out it was cat testicles. And then he goes, the last one, he says, from experiences, it's the meeting of the places where you urinate from. That's the most exciting, the best experience here is such a lowly, look at Allah's put this lowly nature into the dunya.
SubhanAllah.
And then the dunya itself comes from dana, in the classical Arabic, it means to reach out for a grape that you can't actually get. So the dunya, it's like you're trying to get stuff and it's escaping you and you're thirsty, but you're drinking Coke. And so then you're feeling thirsty at the end. You're hungry and you eat this burger, but then you're feeling hungry at the end. Like 2 hours later, you have white bread and like within an hour, you're hungry again because there's absolutely no nutrients in it. So, like really, like, well, you know.
I think
what
like just add to that, like whatever we sort of make is not good enough. Like end of the day, we can't replicate something that's water.
100%.
It's so weird, right? Like as humans have all this technology, but we'll always be low. You know what I mean? And whatever we want, water, which is like needed as humans, is there free.
Yeah. But all these things start with real conversations. Like, yeah, that's all fantastic. But what am I actually seeking in this world, though? Like, what is my equivalent of the house and the 2 cars? Really, like that's where alchemy starts to take place again for me now. I turn around and I say, what do I want? What am I after? Right? And when you start that conversation, you really start taking it somewhere and your existence starts to move to some degree.
I'll add 2 things to that as well.
Please do, Sidi.
Just in terms of the 2 cars and the house, Sheikh Hassan always reminds us, you know those things that you're after? Like the luxury vehicles and the houses and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, just imagine about a car that you bought a few years back. Somebody else is driving it now.
Well,
right. And when you get the ultimate car that you want, somebody else is going to be driving that as well. Somebody else is going to be wearing the clothes that you're wearing. Somebody else is going to be living in the room that you'll be living in. Right. So you're like, is that what you're really after? Right. And so I'll end with what's it called? Abu Madian talks about, you know, happiness and the 4 types of happiness. All right. He calls the cattle type, which is essentially those who just drink, eat, and socialize and find happiness just through that. Then he says the lion nafs, which finds happiness through essentially being praised. You know, you've done a good work. So when they are praised, that's literally they're experiencing ultimate happiness at that point. And then he's like, there's the shaitani nafs or the devil-like nafs that experiences happiness when he's plotting, planning, and deceiving others. And he's literally he's experiencing the ultimate happiness then as well. And then he goes, the final nafs that we should all aspire to is the angelic nafs that receives happiness through the worship of Allah and follow the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ.
I want to last question just to wrap things up, because we actually do ask this question to all our guests at the end. You just give me short answers, but if you had to pick 3 people in history who you can chill with in a cave, because boys in the cave. Oh,
nice! I like it.
Yeah, who would you chill with? But you can't pick Sahaba or Rasul because everyone's gonna pick them.
Yeah, good one. Probably think about it, but
we'll enter in the next podcast.
Yeah, it's worth thinking. But I mean, I'd certainly put so many of them, man.
Yeah, it's always the hardest question. It's surprising. Everyone gets stumped. I had to edit some guest we had. He went for like 5 minutes just thinking. So silence. I'm like, I don't want to make it. So I'll just like edit it.
I mean, if I think about who I thought about straight away, or at least some of the top contenders, maybe just for the sake of time, I'll just settle with them. Really, I could just spend ages on this question, like thinking about it. But just for the sake of time, I'd say, you know, I mean, this.
Or you take your time.
Yeah, like Maulana Rumi would have to be there, man. Like, I just want to see what it looks like. I just want to sit with him and just to see what and how he did it.
Me and Malik will have a conversation now. Just to give
Malik, you got
to the Isaaq at some time.
You're the guest, I'm not the guest, bro.
Oh yeah. No, come on.
Alright, so Rumi's the first one.
Yeah.
So 2 more. That was someone that's influenced you personally, like a teacher or something.
Can they be current?
A current as well.
Yeah, anyone.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was going to. I mean, then
It's
definitely. Then yeah, Malcolm X and Sheikh Hamza. I just feel like because they just teach me so much in that time. But
Yeah,
no, I'd have Sheikh Hamza with me. Yeah, 100%. But even, there's so many to choose from. Jeez, man, that's quite. But yeah, and then someone like.
but you already picked to Sheikh Hamza, Malcolm X.
Yeah, but set with that then. I mean, there's loads of. I was thinking Rabia Ladawiyya. Like, imagine her. She'd just be, amazing.
Incredible.
Then, Junaid al-Baghdadi would be just something, so incredible to sit with. I'd probably even sit with Paracelsus, the 16th century, philosopher, and he was just some of his some of the stuff that he said was just so interesting. Like, I'd love to just absorb what he was saying. I mean, Imam Ghazali, Akid, but like there's so many awliya like Abdul Qadir Jilani, just to sit with him. I just sit like in his presence and just see what comes about. But I don't want to just there's just so many, man. There's
Yeah, it's a lot of Inshallah in Jannah.
But Inshallah, yeah, we'll have a little party going on.
Cave will be a lot bigger.
Yeah.
But
even someone like Plato, that would be so cool because he's just an interesting guy.
Like a monotheist, but a very interesting monotheist.
Yeah. Very like it's interesting. But then there's loads of them, man. I mean, I start thinking about them, and then there's a whole bunch of them. But anyway, for the sake of time, I'll just start mentioning random names and
Alhamdulillah. But this episode's been amazing. Like, I know we were more discussing about the four temperaments at the beginning, but kind of segued into like spirituality and materialism and the immaterial world. And I think I think as a whole, I don't know how to sum it up, but it was just more so dealing with ourselves and knowing what's true and what's reality and knowing ourselves and that connection with Allah as well. So it's kind of, the four temperaments kind of manifest in different aspects in different ways. So
but I mean, the four temperaments are just a tool. Like, they're not the end goal. The end goal is knowing yourself. That's what it's called. That's why it's a self-development program through the four temperaments. It's not like initially it was a class on the four temperaments, but I realized the goal isn't the four temperaments. That's just a science that we could use. The goal is to get to knowing ourselves, because we can get to know ourselves, we can get to know Allah. That's the purpose of the whole thing. But and that's why this is such a fantastic tool, because a lot of people, in knowing themselves, how do I get to know myself? That's why Muslims or anyone who's reading the self-help books and whatever, because how can I get to know myself better? And there's all these funny books. I got so many friends of mine who are reading these books on like all these different perspectives, and it's like the way of the superior. Like, some of these books are like, I mean, I haven't read that one in particular, but there's other ones I just read, like you're not as smart as you think, and then that you just get shredded as a human being. But there's no solutions, and that's what I was saying earlier on, because the foundations of the philosophy of the Western psyche is deconstructing everything. Yeah. Like, we did that at uni, right? Just deconstruct everything. Show the two arguments. What's the solution? Who cares what the solution is? Can you deconstruct it? The more you can deconstruct, the better you are. So science is all about just deconstruct it. What about the constructing? What are you replacing it? What are you offering?
Nothing.
Right? There's really. What,
and as Muslims, we're builders.
Right? We
build palaces.
As Muslims, we're
palaces.
Yeah.
We construct.
Yeah.
And I guess,
and that's why if you construct this one here, that's what the Prophet was telling you. Just construct this. That's the goal, man. Like, that's why. Yeah. In the workshop, one of the reasons is to share with people, but really deep down, it's that I just need like good to cover up my bad, and the Prophet says, you do a bad, do a good to cover it up. So,
SubhanAllah. It's been an amazing conversation.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Thanks for the honor. Yeah. Thanks for Malik.
Anytime.
But I'm still not too happy though, because it's not good to talk too much, and that's why I'm not a fan of podcasts and radios. But
it's a very reflective thing. I think, as we were saying, like, the meeting is the message, and I think a setup like this allows us to take a step back then to really reflect. It's not very short to the point, because there's a lot of ideas that you really need to dig deep, and you do it injustice if you just do it like a very short. That's true. That's true.
Exactly. You're a better guest, inshallah.
More like more real life examples as well. So there's a lot of takeaway points for everyone. That's why I revealed a bit of my own personal stories, just for everyone to kind of relate to, inshallah. But
thank you for the gift. And should we finish off with this poem?
Go for it.
Yeah. I just thought it's Bismillah. So this book was just given to me now, gifted by the boys in the cave, and I don't even know the author, and I just opened it to a random page, and it's called Strangers. And what's interesting is Some of us have just met. Subhanallah. So the poet says, I tiptoe through these lands without a clear view where it would lead me. Through a journey of words, I'll make amends. Why hold a man down for wanting to be free? 'Cause you will never understand what you have until you intentionally or unintentionally lose it. The reason I cross seas and travel through lands, to appreciate what I had in the lands where I bleed. You'll meet people just like you, in similarly different skins, who loved unconditionally through very different means.
Allah.
Podcast. Hear them out, give them your time. He'll clear your doubts in a different rhyme. So, something to think about. And the book is called
Isaaq.Allah.
May Allah heal you. So, I just want to give him credit, the guy. So yeah, that's the book, and check it out.
Yeah, check it out. Really but good. Even with your links, we'll put everything in our show notes. Do you have any? If people wanted to check your socials and stuff,
okay, that's what is important. Yeah, you gotta do this type of stuff. All right, so here we go. Bismillah. Malik, just tell me if I leave anything out. So there's the website mohammedisaaq.com/knowing yourself. Hopefully there'll be stuff on there soon. It's still developing, but you can certainly check it out and maybe just bookmark it. My email for any quick queries, we have a team who deal with it. So and for any bookings, the program's been done in over 20 cities in over 7 countries, to Muslim and non-Muslim audiences, in corporate environments, in private bookings between families, and also just general events as well. And also for schools, there's modules on how to improve the relationship between teachers and students via the 4 temperaments. So there's a lot of stuff out there for people. So it's info.isaaq@gmail.com. So the base by my name is, or would you just put it in
I'll
the
put
info?
In the show notes, I'll put everything in
info.isaaq@gmail.com. And then my Instagram is Isaaq.Muhammad. And a lot of my stuff is posted on there. On Facebook, there's a page as well, but you can just add me on my Facebook. That's Mohammed Isaaq. My name is actually Mohammed Isaaq. Just Instagram, I couldn't get that combination, so I swapped it. Anything else?
That's about it.
Yeah. Was there anything? My number is no.
My address is
Inshallah. So and the most important thing is just to make dua for this project and for myself, but for the whole ummah. Like, constantly make dua for the situations that are going on out there. That's the biggest thing we can do. But also follow and share and like and whatever else that has to be done.
But
inshallah,
may Allah give you success in your works. I know it's much needed as well. It's very unique, especially in the ummah as well. So inshallah, it's like a support system. Like, it's funny how some people might see it as like, even with other Muslim podcasts and whatnot, people think, oh, you're in competition with them, but really, subhanAllah, we all have the same goal, same intention. It's about helping one another. So
exactly,
may Allah
there'll be a mentoring system soon as well, inshallah. So people who actually who've maybe done the course or are familiar with it but want to take it further, they can also get in touch, and hopefully we can arrange something like that. So there's a lot of potential, but like you said, people should be supporting the Boys in the Cave as well, and start your own initiatives as well. Don't just copy and paste. Muslims have a tendency to just, they made a podcast, let's just make a podcast. Do something different and have a good time as well. Like, it's life's kind of serious anyway. So just stay within the boundaries, but have a good time as well, inshallah. And
don't think of seeing the success in this life, because you never know, you could be planting the seeds for the next generation.
100%.
So that's
100%.
Don't just see it as, like, even with me, if we had 10 listeners or whatever, I'll just be like, the information's there. Inshallah, plant the seeds for my kids or whatever. Inshallah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll wrap the puppy up there. So for our listeners, thank you for giving us your attention. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email us at info@boysinthecave.com or find us on Facebook. And you can follow our journey through Instagram. Please leave a 5-star rating on iTunes, as that greatly helps us. If you actually wanted to check out, Alhamdulillah, I know we talked about stats and stuff. We've been number 1 on Australia iTunes, UK iTunes. We're on top 10.
Fantastic, mashallah. Brilliant.
So yeah, you can check that out. So keep supporting us, like iTunes. Give us the 5-star rating. Share with on your Instagram. On Instagram, if you tag us, I'll probably share on our Boys in the Cave as well.
Yeah.
So just do that, inshallah. Just tell people and about our podcast. So from our special guests, Sidi Isaaq and Malik and myself, we wish you all the best. This is Tanzim signing off. Assalamu Alaykum.
Walaykum Assalam.